Like many others, this new story about survival during the apocalypse begins with betrayal. The main character of this story is named Jiang Xiaoyong, and now he is hanging, literally. He's hanging right above a cage full of bloodthirsty zombies. His ex-girlfriend is laughing and mocking him, reminding him that all his friends are dead, but he may not worry. Soon his meaningless life will also end, and he can join his friends. Thinking back on what happened, Xiaoyong couldn't forgive himself for letting it all happen. It was all his fault, or rather, it was his fault for trusting this evil woman who deserved a miserable death. That's who the real villain here is. But for her, all the threats of our hero were not scary at all. She found herself a boyfriend who was stronger and richer, and now asked him to deal with this garbage. The fat man was not at all against helping, and offered to torture Jiang Xiaoyong slowly so that the girl could enjoy the sight and let out her anger. Before pressing the button, the fat man mockingly thanked Xiaoyong for all his supplies. Thanks to his generosity, they would be able to live comfortably for a few months. That was the end of the conversation, and Xiaoyong fell right into the zombie cage. For these insane creatures, there was no difference in what to attack. Fresh flesh was the only thing they desired in this world. The bound Xiaoyong could only scream in pain and dreamed that if he had a second chance to live his life again, he would make his ex-girlfriend Cui Jing and fatty Li Shuxiong pay for what they had done. But suddenly, it was as if Xiaoyong woke up and heard Cui Jing's nasty, disgusting voice demanding an explanation. She wanted to know why it was that he still hadn't put her name on the house deeds. Does he not love her at all? Xiaoyong, meanwhile, was trying to come to his senses and realize what was going on. Had he been reborn in the time before the apocalypse? In his past life, he was deceived by Cui Jing. Not only did she swindle away the inheritance his parents left him, but he also ended up homeless. Later, the apocalypse began, and a global catastrophe turned people into zombies, plunging the entire world into chaos. But even amid this chaos, Xiaoyong was not confused and, with the help of friends, managed to survive and, after some wandering, built a safe zone. In it, they could not be afraid of zombies, and thanks to good supplies, they could live there for months. That's when Cui Jing appeared again. She pretended to be a desperate person who was looking for shelter, and she won Xiaoyong's sympathy again. Yes, it was stupid, and he realized it himself now. The very next night, she opened the gates of the safe zone to the enemies who had long dreamed of destroying them. Now, this same traitorous woman was not calming down and demanded a 400,000 yuan bride price in addition to the house, if he wanted to marry her. She behaved the same as always, confident that Xiaoyong was enchanted by her beauty and couldn't see her rotten character. But this time will be different. He won't let this evil thing twist him around. However, he needs to act carefully. Being overly impulsive could hurt him now. Cui Jing gave him a week to do what she demanded. Otherwise, the wedding would be cancelled. At this, Xiaorong threw her out of the house and assured her that he understood. Cui Jing was not used to such an attitude and couldn't understand what was going on. Since when had her slave, Xiaoyong, become so assertive? Had he changed his mind about being her servant? Now that he was rid of that annoying traitor, he could look around. There was only a month left before the apocalypse began, and Xiaoyong had to start preparing immediately, or else it would be too late. Suddenly, he received a notification, like in some kind of game. He received a system mission after activating the apocalypse system. The mission had a very common name, Apocalypse Preparation. To complete it, he needed to own a piece of land and prepare a year's stock of supplies. For completing it, Xiaoyong could get 10 points, which he could exchange for rewards in the system store. Our hero was pleasantly surprised by such a bonus. The system missions and rewards for their completion. What else is needed for happiness? Just what could be bought in the system store? Mostly, there were loot boxes and some potions, for example, to improve physical strength. But from all this, our hero was distracted by his stomach grumbling and demanding a proper meal. Xiaoyong had almost forgotten how, in his previous life, he was skimping and saving every penny to gather Cui Jing's bride price. which left him malnourished. Now, he was not going to limit himself and decided to have a fancy dinner delivered. In a month, zombies would be everywhere, and as long as good food is available, he should take advantage of it. A few hours later, the delivery arrived. Xiaoyong would never have allowed himself such a legendary Michelin 3-star takeaway before. He decided to start by tasting what a 300 yuan braised pork tasted like. After what he ate during the apocalypse, it was divine and just too good to be true. Our hero didn't stop there and went into food devourer mode. His appetite was quite good, and soon he was almost done. Just at this moment, the phone rang. When Shuya, Cui Jing's friend, was calling, which meant that she had already managed to complain to her. Xiaoyong answered the phone and immediately regretted it. A shout immediately came from the phone. When Shuya demanding to explain how dare he treat Cui Jing like that. She just wanted him to prove his love. If he can't give her his property, then how can he say he loves her? Cui Jing was just testing him a little, and he failed the test. But if he brings the house deeds and 1,000,000 yuan in cash as an apology, then when Shuya will try to help him convince Cui Jing that it was just a misunderstanding. If he doesn't, he can expect a breakup. After such a long speech, our hero simply ran out of patience. Who does she think she is to test him? With an attitude like that, she should just get lost. When Shuya still tried to object, but Xiaoyong just ended the call. He was already fed up with these money-hungry girls. He didn't care about them now. The most important thing was to find and buy a suitable piece of land. There, he could build the strongest fortress, which would not only be easy to defend, but also close to a source of water and forest. The next morning, he arrived at the real estate agency. He was immediately greeted by a consultant and asked if he had come to rent or buy a house. Xiaoyong assured her that it was neither. He was here for something more valuable. Suddenly, a real estate sales manager came up behind them and ordered the consultant Xiaoyong to go and help carry the boxes. They received a big shipment of toilet paper today. She tried to explain that she had a customer, but it was no use. Manager Zhu didn't see Xiaoyong as a customer at all. He even scolded his subordinate for forgetting everything he taught her. Convinced that you can't be a real estate agent without flair, he sent her to work in the backyard and told our hero that such a broke loser in cheap clothes probably cannot even afford to buy a toilet, so he can't even be called a customer. This arrogant attitude annoyed our hero, and he was going to teach this manager a lesson. To start with, Xiaoyong asked him to repeat what he just said and explain how dare he look down on others. Manager Zhu was not going to back down. Confident in his power, he proudly declared that he was a man who looked down on dogs like our hero. If he could buy himself at least a toilet, he would eat on livestream. One look at Xiaoyong was enough to realize that the manager would soon regret his words. Well, since the manager said so himself, Xiaoyong advised him to make sure he would find some fresh, steaming ones later. After all, our hero didn't come here today to rent or sell a house, but to buy land. All the customers around him were shocked. It was the first time they had seen someone rich enough to buy land. In that case, Miss Xiaoning invited him to sit down so she could give him a detailed introduction. Manager Zhu watched all this with gritted teeth, confident that anyone could talk. But when it came to payment, he didn't believe that Xiaoyong would be able to pay. Xiaoning provided our hero with all the pieces of land available for purchase. He could view them while she would explain everything. But for our hero, none of that was necessary. He knew exactly what he wanted. Xiaoyong was going to name his requirements and let her see if they had anything suitable. Xiaoyong wanted the land to be near mountains and water, preferably with running water. It would be ideal to have factories or large buildings on the land. To find something suitable, Xiang needed a little time. But then Manager Zhu came from behind again. He seemed to have a hobby of approaching from behind. He thought that the piece of land that fit all the requirements was located in the Eastern District. Xiang thought it was a bad idea. That place was the Tea City land. There were many unfinished factories and pending projects there. Such property couldn't be sold to customers. Manager Zhu didn't think so. He still hadn't seen any customers here, and this loser, with such high demands, in his opinion, was not here to buy land, but to make trouble. Xiaoyong didn't care where the land was located as long as it met his requirements. Incomplete factories were also not a problem, even on the contrary, an advantage. After looking at the details, our hero decided that it was exactly what he needed. With the barbed wire, this place would be easy to defend, and unfinished factories would save a lot of money and time on construction. So he agreed to buy this land. He was ready to sign the contract now and pay for the purchase. Xiao Ning was shocked. She couldn't believe that someone in his right mind was going to buy this land with unfinished factories. But still, Xiaoyong stood firm and even asked her to do it quickly, because someone here couldn't wait to eat fresh poop. Soon enough, Manager Zhu held the check in his hands and couldn't believe it was possible. This ragamuffin was able to pay 300,000 yuan for land with abandoned factories. This was just crazy to him. Xiaoyong reminded him before he left that he had made the payment, and now it was his turn to perform. While Zhu is enjoying the process, Xiaoyong will send him a donation in Super Chat so that he won't be offended. The other customers started encouraging the fat manager to hurry up because they had already started the stream. One just had a stomach that didn't feel good, but he promised that it would at least be fresh. Thus, Xiaoyong had completed the first step of the system task. Now it was time to get to the second one. Xiaoyong had spent all the money to buy the land, and now he needed to figure out how to get money to accumulate supplies. When he was leaving the real estate agency, he was recognized by an old acquaintance, Li Shuxiong, and he immediately wondered what our hero was doing there. However, all these questions flew out of his head when he saw what was going on inside. The staff and customers were forcing Manager Zhu to keep his promise, while he was desperately asking for help and how much he didn't want to eat poop. Meanwhile, Cui Jing was painting her nails and enjoying life. Carefree, she got a call from Li Shuxiong and asked if she knew that Xiaoyong had come to the real estate company to buy land. Of course, she didn't know and was shocked at where he got so much money from. Li Shuxiong clarified that Xiaoyong had paid 300,000 yuan, probably the bride price money he saved. Now, she was just furious that that bastard dared to use her money. Li Shuxiong advised her to calm down and not get mad, but rather go find Xiaoyong and ask him what was going on. But she was blinded by anger. She wasn't going to ask him anything. That bastard was using her money, and she was going to expose him today. In the meantime, our hero had his worries. Buying supplies and building a base required a lot of money to be found. All his peaceful musings were interrupted by a frantic knock on the door. It was Cui Jing along with her sister. She was still furious that he dared to spend her money. Xiaoyong still couldn't understand what she was talking about. Cui Jing, on the other hand, continued as she thought to expose him, that he used the bride price money to buy land. That money belonged to her, and since he bought the land with it, it also belonged to her. Xiaoyong didn't even know how to respond to this crazy woman's claims. He finally decided to explain things to her in a way that even a dumbass like her would understand. He has a lot of money, but he's not going to spend a single cent on her. Besides, he knows about her affairs with Li Shuxiong. Cui Jing didn't understand what was going on and how he even knew about her and Li Shuxiong. Her sister, seeing where things were going, suggested to everyone to calm down and solve this little misunderstanding between the couple. But Xiaoyong was not going to waste his precious time on these two. There is no misunderstanding here. Cui Jing is not his girlfriend, but a pathetic doormat of that old fatty Li Shuxiong. Right after that, he slammed the door in her face and told her to get lost. Just looking at her already annoys him. Cui Jing still couldn't understand how he knew. She and Li Shuxiong had always been very careful when renting rooms. Her sister didn't know about them either and didn't understand why her sister didn't share such important information with her up front. Is she dating that middle-aged man? Cui Jing assured that it was nothing serious. They had just rented rooms a few times. In such an out-of-control situation, They had no choice but to go home and come up with a new plan. That's all they could do, since her sister screwed up with Xiaoyong. She was now not going to hold back and wanted to charm Xiaoyong. After all, they were good sisters. The next day, Xiaoyong arrived on his land together with a construction crew. He wanted to rebuild one factory, and he was wondering how long it would take. After a detailed analysis, Foreman Lee summarized that reinforcing the walls, building protective towers, installing Texas barbed wire, thickening the steel armored doors, and adding bulletproof glass were all time-consuming processes. But he was interested in one additional question. What kind of power had offended our hero that he needed to build such a fortress? Xiaoyong advised him not to ask too much, because knowing too much does not lead to anything good. Our hero just wanted to know how much it would cost to finish the construction in a month. Foreman assured him that it couldn't be done in a month. In that case, Xiaoyong knew many who were willing to do it instead. Foreman replied that the lives and well-being of the workers were worth more. This surprised our hero. He had first met a foreman with conscience, but it turned out that he was wrong. It just meant that there would be a lot of money needed. Xiaoyong asked him to tell him the price without delay. Foreman Lee calculated that if they had to finish the project in a month, the workers would have to work around the clock, so the cost would be 6 digits. The price was 20 million, and they wanted to get a deposit of 5 million yuan before they started construction, so they could start work right away. But this option was not quite suitable for our hero. He wanted them to start work right away, and he would transfer the money to them within a week. The construction company didn't have to worry that he wouldn't pay. If he couldn't, that land would be theirs. Suddenly, she appeared on the construction site. She defiantly hugged his arm and asked him what he was doing there. Xiaoyong was already sick of this rotten woman. In his previous life, she, along with Cui Jing, had forced him out of his parents' legacy, and this time he was willing to make her pay twice as much. All her attempts were useless. No matter how much she tried to act like a nice girl, he could see her rotten nature. She asked if this was the land he bought. It's such a beautiful view, and Xiaoyong probably wants to build a villa here, right? But whatever he builds here is none of her business. Seeing this attitude, she couldn't understand what was going on. Since when did that loser behave so strangely? Usually, just her touch on his arm was enough to make him blush and his heart start pounding. But today, none of that worked. Instead, he indifferently turned away from her and went to instruct the construction workers on what they were doing wrong and that the gate needed to be widened. When Zuya couldn't afford to miss such a golden opportunity, since Cui Jing had ruined everything with her cheating, she should move, and this land would become hers. Xiaoyong returned home and wondered how he could get more money. After he mortgaged the house to the bank, he only got a 3 million yuan loan. It wasn't enough to cover the cost of even the first phase of construction, although if you thought about it that way, the apocalypse was inevitable anyway. And if he sold the house to a few people, it wouldn't matter. It was something that needed to be dealt with. Just in time, there was a knock on the door. It was the damn annoying old man neighbor. He lived downstairs, and his name was Grandpa Lee. He was a rich old bastard. He owned the apartments on the first and second floor and wanted to buy the third floor too. But Xiaoyong wouldn't agree to sell it, so this old man was doing all sorts of nasty things. Painting the doors, scattering trash, bringing coffins, and jamming locks to the doors. He's been up to all kinds of dirty tricks, and now he's come to complain that Xiaoyong made noise last night by having a party here. Of course, it was a deliberate lie. Our hero went to bed early last night and didn't do anything like that. But there was no point in arguing further. Xiaoyong knew that the old man wanted his house, so he pretended that he was fed up and gave up. Now, he was ready to sell the house to the old man. The old geezer couldn't believe his ears, but Xiaoyong had a condition. He wanted to stay in the house for another 6 months until he found a new place to live. But the old man must transfer 5 million into his account right now so he could pay the deposit for the new house. If the old man doesn't agree to this condition, he can forget about the deal. The greedy old bastard couldn't let that slip away and agreed, but demanded to sign the contract so that Xiaoyang couldn't change his mind later. This was no problem for our hero. That old bastard would still die in his house when the apocalypse started. Once old Li transferred 5 million yuan. Then in sum with the loan from the bank, Xiaoyang collected 8 million. Now it's time to complete the second task and get the reward. The biggest supermarket was perfect for this task. Xiaoyang began to diligently stock up on supplies for the year ahead. People around him looked at him as a mentally unstable guy and preferred to stay away. Finally, he dragged a whole bunch of grocery carts to the checkout line. People around him still didn't understand why he was buying so much stuff. They just laughed at him like he was just another fool who believed in rumors about the apocalypse and the end of the world. But their conversations didn't mean anything. The most important thing was that Xiaoyang had completed the system's task and received 10 points. Among all the options available in the system store, the protagonist's supply box was worth 10 points, and Xiaoyang didn't hesitate to use this opportunity and decided to spend all the available points on this box. The purchase was successful, and he received this mysterious box. After opening it, he received a level 1 space ring that allowed him to use his subspace of 500 cubic meters. Also, inside this space, time stood still, allowing the items inside to not spoil. This was an incredibly successful gain. There was a reason why our hero had a good feeling about this box. The fact that the time inside the subspace stood still meant that he could even store fresh food inside, and it would never spoil. Along with the new item, Xiaoyang also received a new mission, 10 years of sustenance. For its completion, it was possible to get 20 points. But suddenly, our hero was called by the supermarket security chief. He'd gotten word that some crazy guy was causing trouble. Turns out he knew Xiaoyang. The security chief's name was Yang Tao. He went to the same high school as our hero and was the lackey of a local bully who bullied the weak and feared the strong. In the past, he had extorted money from high school students for his boss, and Xiaoyang had frequent conflicts with him. Today, Xiaoyang didn't expect to run into him here. Yang Tao demanded that our hero put all these things back where he got them from. Otherwise, he would not be kind to him. Xiaoyang replied that he still hadn't changed and was still bullying the weak. But our hero was not going to return anything. He is a customer here and he is always right. Is this really how customers are treated? Then Yang Tao demanded that Xiaoyang pay for the items right now. Otherwise, it would be his fault for being cruel. After an hour, all the cashiers in the supermarket finally calculated the price of all the items, a total of 56,000 yuan. Yang Tao immediately demanded to pay, and our hero did not hesitate to use his credit card as a superhero weapon. The transaction was successful, and the security chief was shocked. He turned around and was about to leave, accepting his defeat, but Xiaoyang ordered him to wait. Yang Tao didn't realize what he was doing, but it was simple. Yang Tao had been rude, and now our hero wanted a public apology, or else he would return all those goods. The security chief thought that he had gone too far and was only looking for trouble. However, there were too many witnesses around. They saw everything and fully supported our hero. They recorded everything on video and threatened Yang Tao to make him famous all over the internet if he didn't apologize. Xiaoyang also promised that if the apology was sincere enough, he would buy the goods here 10 times more. If Yang Tao didn't believe him, then he could bring the POS machine and our hero would show him his balance. Yang Tao couldn't believe it when he saw 7 million in the account. Xiaoyang only demanded to apologize, and then he would continue buying. While the security chief struggled with his pride, this battle was short-lived, and he lost. The pressure was too high, and he gave up and apologized. Passing by, Xiaoyang advised him not to be so thoughtless in the future, because you never know how the situation will turn out. Now, Yang Tao put on a mask of benevolence and asked why our hero buys so many things. Of course, Xiaoyang replied it was none of his business. He was planning a big deal. In that case, Yang Tao knew what to offer. The items in this supermarket's warehouse were not enough. If Xiaoyong wanted to make a big deal, he should have found a wholesaler, and he just knew one since he worked at the supermarket. It was Zhang Xingzhe. He was currently in the wholesale business. He immediately called him and happily told him that he had found a big customer for him. Xiaoyong realized that some people never change, and since these two bullies still work together, he could only wonder how much they were ripping off the supermarket. Soon, they arrived at the wholesale warehouse together. An expensive car drove up to them rather carelessly. From the way Zhang Xingzhe drove arrogantly, our hero realized that he had probably never been scammed before, and it was time to fix that. It was a meeting of old friends, although the arrogant boss didn't recognize our hero right away, and Tao had to remind him that they once went to middle and high school together. Even so, Zhang Xingzhe had a hard time remembering who Xiaoyong was at first, but after thinking for a while, he finally remembered. It was exactly that guy with a bit of a backbone. Xingzhe took one look at his former classmate. He didn't like the cheap, non-designer clothes at all. He despised people who pretended to be rich when they weren't. Xingzhe had already made a conclusion about our hero based on his clothes. He immediately turned to Tao to teach this idiot a lesson for bringing him such a useless big client and wasting his time. Shangxia even gave him a kick in the ass to think better next time. Even though Tao tried to stand his ground, knowing that Xiaoyong was rich, Xingzhe couldn't even allow such a thought. He had been in this business for years, and as he thought, he could tell at a glance who was rich and who wasn't. Xiaoyong saw that some people never change and called Xingzhe an illiterate who looks down on people. Xingzhe immediately grabbed him and demanded him to repeat what he just said. Xiaoyong was not afraid of him and repeated to his face that he looked down on people. But it turned out that it was not this that offended him at all, but the fact that our hero called him illiterate. This was not what Xiaoyong had expected. It turned out that this bastard was shameless. Tao, seeing the impending fight, hurriedly intervened and advised our hero not to touch Xingzhe's weak point. He is illiterate, so he hates to be called like that. But for saying that, Tao received another kick and insults. He was angry because he was not allowed to do what he wanted. Turning to our hero, Xingzhe gave him a condition. Either Xiaoyong buys a truckload of goods from him or crawls back on all fours. Our hero was more than satisfied with this. He ordered Xingzhe to let go of his collar and call out the account number. In just a moment, the angry expression on Xingzhe's face changed to a shocked one. Xiaoyong had somehow actually transferred $1 million into his account. According to our hero, it was only a deposit. He had plans to buy $5 million worth of goods. Xingzhe asked what kind of goods he needed. Xiaoyong replied that he needed oil, rice, salt, snacks, and drinks. Simply put, the products that didn't spoil for a long time. An imperceptible smile appeared on Xingzhe's face. He had just received a batch of almost expired food, and this was the perfect opportunity to slip it to Xiaoyong. Upon arriving at the warehouse with the food, Xingzhe offered our hero to pick up the entire shipment at a discount of 10% off the original wholesale price. The offer was great. However, Xiaoyong realized that Xingzhe wouldn't sell him food at such a cheap price so simply. So, the first thing he decided to do was to check the quality of the food. As Xiaoyong suspected, it was a trap. Although the packaging looked new, the food was almost expired. Xingzhe didn't expect Xiaoyong to figure out his plans so quickly. He immediately offered him a discount of as much as 50%, but our hero wasn't satisfied with this deal. With this $5 million, he intended to buy the highest quality food. However, he had plans for this expired product as well. Xiaoyong told Xingzhe that he was willing to take the expired goods from him for half the price, but with the condition that the payment would be made in a month. Xingzhe was incredulous at our hero's words, but Xiaoyong replied that he would pledge his house. Xingzhe was confused because he didn't understand why Xiaoyong needed the expired food. He couldn't even suspect that after a while, even this expired food would be worth its weight in gold. Xiaoyong didn't intend to go into details and told Xingzhe to deliver the goods to him at the right address. Suddenly, someone called our hero regarding the sale of a house. quickly saying goodbye to Shengzai and Tao. He left. The buyer was an old man who was ready to pay a 400,000 down payment and give Xiaoyong 3 months to move out. Everything was going so well that it made our hero a little wary. He asked the old man why he was in such a hurry. He replied that his granddaughter was about to change schools, and she needed a place to live. Xiaoyong was the only one selling the house in the neighborhood. The old man was so honest that he gave Xiaoyong all the information himself. Our hero asked if he was afraid that with this information, he might raise the price. The old man realized his mistake and, in a panic, began to beg our hero not to do this, as it was all his savings. Xiaoyong was not a scumbag who took advantage of innocent people's kindness. He replied that their deal was on, and then signed the contract. The old man was incredibly happy, for now his granddaughter had a place to live. He was so kind and polite that he even apologized to Xiaoyong for distracting him from his work. Realizing how kind and honest the old man was, our hero felt that he and his granddaughter would not last a month in the apocalypse. Calling out to the old man who was already leaving, he asked him for his address. After a while, Xiaoyong arrived at his land, where work was in full swing. After telling the foreman that the payment would be transferred soon, he inquired about the progress. As it turned out, almost 80% of the construction had been completed. The protection and thickness of the walls and doors were just as he had requested. The warehouse was based on the factory there. Everything was ready, and the warehouse could be used. This was great news. Xiaoyong immediately called Xingzhe and told him to bring the supplies soon. The warehouse, more like a doomsday vault, began to fill up with resources under Xiaoyong's strict command. Everything was ready by evening. As soon as the workers left, our hero could finally evaluate the work done. Everything had gone according to his plan, and now he could exhale. At the same time, the system sent a notification that he had completed the task, for which he received 20 system points. When Xiaorong opened the system store, he saw that there was a new box with awakened abilities in it. This meant that he could obtain supernatural abilities before the apocalypse began. Xiaoyong bought one box without a second thought. When he opened the box, he obtained a level 1 ability called Mind's Eye, thanks to which he could detect the hostility of the target. Xiaoyong was glad because, in his opinion, this was one of the most useful skills in the early stages of the apocalypse. The system didn't seem to want our hero to relax, as it soon sent him another task. This time he needed to obtain weapons, lots of weapons. Xiaoyong didn't mind at all, as that was exactly what he intended to do. It was time to get some guns. With the new task at hand to arm himself for the upcoming apocalypse, Zhang Xiaoyong found himself in the seedy underbelly of the city, the busy late-night black market. Walking around, he could hear the incessant haggling and obnoxious noises of customers and sellers trying to get better deals for themselves. There were scammers everywhere. Suddenly, something caught RMC's attention, something he saw out of the corner of his eye. It was a man familiar to him, the man that Cui Jing was clinging to in the first apocalypse, Li Shuxian. He was aggressively trying to bring down the price of some fake jewelry, eventually whittling down the seller to agree. Zhang Xiaoyong was not expecting to run into this guy tonight, but it made sense that the bastard would be trolling for fake jade bracelets. That witch, Cui Jing, was dumb enough to be tricked by fake gifts. A few feet away, he finally found a stall selling some promising wares. Sharp blades were lined up on the floor, each one more lethal than the last. As soon as he laid eyes on those sharp blades, a smile crept up on his face. He finally found what he was looking for. Squatting down in front of the seller, he boldly asked if they sold any hard stuff at this stall. Mr. Camouflage, who looked like a military man, wasn't amused by any of his cryptic messaging. The dude threw him a knife sharpener, telling the young man to grind the blades himself for something harder. Growing more serious, he commented that none of these knives were hard enough. What he was looking for was something a lot tougher. Realizing what he was implying, Mr. Camo turned deathly serious and asked if he was asking for trouble. Mr. Camo's irritation was interrupted by the sound of his phone notification that 200,000 yuan had been transferred into his bank account. In front of him was Zhang Xiaoyong, holding up the receipt after he sent the astronomical funds through the QR code at the stall. This was his way of pacifying the irate seller and proving that he was a serious buyer. Finally convinced, Mr. Camo called one of his men to come and watch the stall while he handled real business. His attitude towards Zhang Xiaoyong made a 180 degrees turn as he politely led the young man to another building, as talking outside could be a little inconvenient. They did not have any problems entering the innocuous building next to the store. Mr. Camo was now trying to sell Xiaoyong some homemade guns for small targets. They cost 2,000 yuan, and ammo would come cheap. Our boy immediately declined. That stoked Mr. Camo's competitive spirit a little bit, so he busted out some replica revolvers modeled after active duty handguns. For 5,000 yuan, you'd get a 9mm shooter. Bullets would be 5 yuan a pop. For Xiaoyong, this much was barely acceptable, but he prepaid 200,000 yuan. This junk did not stoke his interest at all. Confused by the mention of prepayment, Mr. Camo asked what he meant by it. Zhang Xiaoyong proclaimed that the initial transfer from earlier was just a 10% prepayment for his order of 2 million yuan worth of weaponry. Mr. Camo was getting a little worried regarding this mysterious buyer's affiliation. Xiaoyong made up some story about how his subordinates usually handle this type of sleazy buys, but he's here now and doesn't appreciate unwelcome questions regarding his identity. Sensing that the young man must mean some serious business, Mr. Camo respectfully urged him to wait just a moment. While frantically running to a different room, he hurriedly turned the lock on the entrance just to be safe. Mr. Camo also gave the surrounding area a quick look around through the window. He turned to Zhang Xiaoyong and claimed that he came to the right person. Walking closer, he whispered that he'd handle this matter. All he needed was an address, and they'd proceed with the transaction at midnight, the day after tomorrow. He'd only accept cash. By the time Zhang Xiaoyong exited the innocuous place, Mr. Camo was practically treating him like a VIP. Xiaoyong was just unlucky enough to get back to the night market street right when the familiar bastard from earlier was walking around. Li Shuxiong commented on this unexpected meeting in a black market no less. Now it makes sense why the young man has been spending so much lately. There's also the matter of Cui Jing. He reckoned that the kid must have seen too much financial advice lately, and now he's trying to lie flat, sell everything, and live in comfort. Unbothered by all the nonsensical words of a fat bastard, Zhang Xiaoyong thought it would be more practical to just try out his newly acquired ability. Opening his mind's eye, an imperceptible aura lit up his gaze. He could see a happy face indicator on top of Mr. Camo's head and an angry one on Li Shuang's. This was a very useful ability. As he had expected, to experiment more, he talked trash about the fat bastard buying fake and second-hand goods to trick Cui Jing. That girl was also his second-hand trash, so it made sense that she was only worth so much. Hearing that made the fat bastard's indicator even angrier as he cursed out the young man after hitting a nerve. Seeing the developing conflict, Mr. Camo stepped in and asked his new big fish client if the fuming fat bastard was bothering Xiaoyong. He labeled Li Shuxiong as an enemy. Taking the hint, Mr. Camo assured his new big bro that he and his staff would teach the fat bastard a lesson. Xiaoyong was cool with that, but he reminded them not to go too far as he had other plans for Li Shuxiong in the future. Seeing a group of well-built thugs coming after his fat ass, the wannabe gangster started freaking out, stumbling over his words and losing his arrogance. Mr. Camo did not waste any more words on the piece of trash and pulled out a baton. The boys made quick work of the fat bastard, leaving him beaten and bruised in the middle of the dark road. There were shoe prints all over his face and his white suit from all the kicking he endured. This event only strengthened his distaste for Zhang Xiaoyong. 2 days later, the rendezvous was set at the warehouse, and it seemed like both parties were on time for the agreement. In front of Xiaoyong was a truckload of suspicious crates. This was precisely what he wanted. The arrival of his firearm signaled the success of his battle-ready task, rewarding him with 10 system points, bringing his total up to 20. Inside the crates were heavy firearms, rifles, pistols, and every extra piece of equipment he might need. For some reason, the system also added a bonus reward, a +2 physical enhancement potion. Holding the syringe in his hand, he was pretty pleased with the unexpected drop of this bonus. With the +2 classifications, it was even double the efficacy of the one in the system store. Not wasting another second, he lifted that syringe and aimed at his veins. He was expecting a tiny pinch of the needle, but the strength potion coursing through his bloodstream was an agonizing process. As an average adult male, his physical score would be around 5 points. With an increase of +2, that's practically a 40% boost in his overall power. Since that's the case, he resolved to open the system store, his gaze locking in on the other physical enhancement potion listed there. Realizing the value of increased strength while holding another massive syringe, he might as well maximize the advantage it would give. After injecting another strength cheat code, his physical score had finally reached 8. He was practically 60% stronger than an average man, and he was eager to test this out. Seeing some loose iron bars strewn around the warehouse, the idea of testing struck Jiang Xiaoyong. He took one of the iron bars, one of those thick ones used for reinforcing buildings. Xiaoyong threw it up in the air and proceeded to kick it as fast and hard as he could. His attack bent the thick rod quite noticeably. The momentum carried on with the stick flying right into the nearby wall. Xiaoyang's kick was powerful enough to make a decent dent in a wall through the iron bar. With his current strength, his bare hands are practically weapons now. He would be comfortable going up against an early apocalypse right about now. As for the weapons he just procured, keeping them out in the open would be a stupid move, so it would be better to store them in the spatial ring for safety. Xiaoyang just pointed his magical ring at the contents of the truck, and they were promptly absorbed. If everything proceeds as he remembers, the day after tomorrow will mark the first day of the apocalypse. He doesn't have much time to do everything else that needs to be done. For some reason, he couldn't brush off the image of that old man pleading to buy his house using a modest amount of hard-earned cash for his granddaughter. Jiang Xiaoyong had been through countless life and death scenarios and treachery in the first apocalypse, but ignoring the plight of the unfortunate had never been his style. Maybe he'll send some essential supplies to the old man. That's the least he could do to help him and his granddaughter's chances of survival. It's a repayment of sorts for supplying Xiaoyang's apocalypse funds. The very next day, Jiang Xiaoyong drove to a rundown apartment building in a shady part of a different city. Without GPS, finding this place would have been impossible, given how hidden and decrepit it was. Seeing as the old man had been renting in such a cheap and old place without an elevator, it was evident that he wasn't well off. Their unit was even on the top floor. Reaching the door, Xiaoyang casually knocked. He suddenly realized that he should take out the supplies from his storage ring, or he would have a hard time explaining where they came from. Activating its effects, boxes upon boxes of essential supplies stacked on top of one another filled the hallway. At that moment, the old man reached the door. He opened it and immediately assumed it was the landlord, promising to pay rent next week. When he got a good look at the young man, he realized it was Mr. Jiang. With him were the boxes crowding the hallway, stretching through the staircase, which confused the old man even more. Xiaoyang promised to explain the deal later. They needed to get these boxes inside before the neighbors saw them. After a few minutes of lifting, which was done mostly by Xiaoyang, they managed to get everything inside. The old man was impressed that the young man didn't even look tired. Meanwhile, Xiaoyang was just surveying the room and analyzing if it would be a suitable emergency shelter. And it was. The front door was solid enough. Next, he urged the old man to listen carefully to what he was about to say. He explained that the supplies should be used wisely, as they should last for about half a year, starting tomorrow. Just as he was about to go into more detail, Xiaoyang was taken aback by a photo displayed in the room. The old man was still confused. In the photo was the proud old man and his beautiful granddaughter. Much to Xiaoyang's surprise, the girl in the photo was a close friend he had during the first apocalypse, Shanshan. He promptly asked the old man if the girl in the photo was named Meng Shanshan. This confused the old man even further, as he had never mentioned her name to the young man before. Xiaoyang's expression darkened, and he hurriedly asked the old man where the girl was. She was still at school while they were arranging the transfer paperwork. The young man could still remember when Shanshan expressed her regrets about dooming her grandpa in the early days of the first apocalypse. As far as he could remember, Shanshan's grandpa would end up risking everything to save her. The old man would bravely break into her zombie-infested school. In that doomed timeline, he would manage to save her, but would die in the process. Being a close aide in his previous life, Xiaoyang resolved to never let that kind of pain happen to Shanshan again. He turned to the old man and declared that the house wasn't for sale anymore. The innocent grandpa panicked, thinking Mr. Jiang was pulling out of the deal, but Xiaoyang gave him a tougher pill to swallow. The world would turn into a living hell tomorrow. The house and Shanshan's school wouldn't matter anymore. For now, they needed to pick her up and transfer her to a safer place. This sudden declaration only confused the old man even more. Xiaoyang was in such a rush that he failed to factor in the incredulity of the apocalypse. It was hard to explain what was about to happen to an old man, so he used a more understandable term for an old head, urging the old man to imagine how tragic and terrifying living through a famine was. Sure, it sounded scary, but famines couldn't happen in times of peace, right? Realizing that no words could convince the old man to trust him, Zhang Xiaoyang took a show-don't-tell approach. He sucked all the supply boxes back into his storage ring in an instant. He even included everything else in the room. By the time he was done, the old man was looking at an empty, spacious room. There was no other word to describe it other than magic. Zhang Xiaoyang proclaimed that he had superpowers and could see into the future. The old man needed to listen to everything he said to survive and save Shanshan. Their next move was to take the girl out of that school. On the car ride to where Shanshan was, the old man's mouth still hung wide open, his eyes fixated on the unbelievable young man. To get there as fast as possible, Xiaoyang drove like a madman, as if traffic laws were merely suggestions. Running out of the vehicle, they needed to find Shanshan wherever she was. In front of one of the department buildings was a young woman surrounded by a few other students. It was none other than Shanshan. Right now, some stereotypical, which was slapping her across the face because some boy liked her with defiant eyes. Shanshan insisted that she didn't even want to be with the freak, and she did like the attention from the creep. Another witch stepped in and kicked her in the stomach for daring to talk back. Two witches took turns beating her up out of jealousy over all the attention Shanshan was getting because of her beauty. The situation was rapidly accelerating, only to be interrupted by the voice of the old man. After seeing his granddaughter in such a heartbreaking position, those witches turned their attention to the grandpa running towards his precious granddaughter. He yelled at the unruly young women for what they were doing to Shanshan, telling them to let go of the girl. That's when some ugly thugs stood in his path, telling the old man to step back and let the girls settle their business without interruption, deliberately showing their blunt weapons and blades. The old man did not hesitate to charge in, even when threatened with knives, yelling at the boys for being mannerless bullies. One of the thugs raised his steel bat, aiming it at the old man's head. It would have been quite a severe ordeal had the bat hit, but Xiaoyang decided to step in on time, stopping the bully's attack. He looked at the young waste of space. It seemed like young guns were still learning to be thugs. The other two shifted their attention to Xiaoyang. They thought he was Shanshan's older brother or something, an easy target. Nevertheless, the bully's hands holding the steel bat didn't budge no matter how he struggled, and then Xiaoyang made him eat a solid kick to the solar plexus. The poor thug flew into the air, looking like he had been launched by a cannon. Looking at the fate of the first thug, The other two hesitated for a moment. By the looks of it, Xiaoyang seemed trained in combat. Maybe if they went at him as a double team, they could sneak a hit in. But judging by the cold and calculating glare of Xiaoyang, that didn't seem to be the case. Two thugs, one at the front holding a knife and the other at the back holding a bat. This was the best plan two wannabe thugs could cook up. The first one to make a move was the one from the flank doing a full bat swing. Sensing the incoming attack, Xiaoyang was easily dodged by swift ducking. His new body was proving useful already. After taking those potions and enhancing his physical abilities, his reaction speed was even heightened. He grabbed the thug who tried to bash him in the head, pulling him by the collar as if Xiaoyang were catching a badly behaved kid. With his newfound strength, slamming the bastard right into the cold, hard ground was easy for him. One slam was all it took for the bully to pass out. The guy must have hit his head on the concrete or something. Taking the chance, the remaining bully rushed in with a knife in hand. Without even batting an eye, the zombie apocalypse veteran redirected the weapon and stared down the blonde bully with his unwavering eyes. Xiaoyang didn't even break eye contact while priming his leg for another kick. This time, he kicked the remaining thug on the side of the leg. The force was so powerful that it made the bully fold like an omelet. For additional damage, the fall eventually ended with Blondie's face hitting the floor quite hard. In just a few seconds, the wannabe thugs were dealt with appropriately. The only obstacles remaining in front of him were the catty witches aggravating Shanshan for no good reason. After going through the first grueling apocalypse, Zhang Xiaoyang is now a proponent of equal rights and equal fights. So, he smacked that bully witch across the face. She wasn't expecting it either. The strength behind that slap was quite serious. It made her shiver and her cheek turned red. As for the other bully, since she liked pulling Shanshan's hair so much, Xiaoyang gave the witch a taste of her own medicine. He didn't let go no matter how much she pleaded. With a murderous gaze, he pulled out the knife he got from Blondie and placed it against the girl's neck. Scared of what he might do, the witch was frightened to tears. Every bystander in the area heard a crisp slash and an ear-piercing scream. Xiaoyang didn't even bat an eye. In the first apocalypse, he did a lot of things for the sake of survival, and those instincts have remained with him. The ladies watched in horror at the result of what he had just done. Miss Bully dropped to her knees, seemingly lifeless and powerless. Don't worry, he is not that brutal, at least not yet. He just gave the bully a little haircut and humiliated her in front of everyone. Still not learning her lesson, the witch cried out that she wouldn't let Xiaoyang get away after doing her dirty like this. He didn't pay any mind to her empty threats while glaring down at her pathetic self. He sprinkled the locks of hair on top of her head for maximum disrespect. He did so while telling her that he did her a favor, as long hair would only be a burden shortly. Everyone was confused by his cryptic words, but he assured them that having short hair might just save the bully's life in the coming days. Xiaoyang turned to Shanshan with close familiarity, telling her that they had to go now, even if she didn't know where. Nevertheless, the old man convinced his granddaughter to board Mr. Zhang's car immediately. In there, her grandpa told her that she wouldn't be coming to school anymore. With a crazy look in his eyes, the old man explained that a massive famine was coming and survival would have to be their priority. Shanshan wasn't buying it though. She thought her grandpa just fell for one of those scam calls. Xiaoyang watched the two bicker as the young woman worried that her grandpa had just gotten conned for some cash. The young man was just glad to see Shanshan safe, promising to keep her safe in this new life. Seeing his grandpa's words had no effect, he budged in and confessed that the information about this alleged famine came from him. Come to think of it, she didn't even know who this guy was driving them to God knows where. Xiaoyang properly introduced himself, letting Shanshan call him Brother Xiaoyang. She thanked him for standing up to the bastards at school, and he assured her that those guys wouldn't have many days left alive. Now, she was curious if there was a famine coming so suddenly. He finally fessed up that he just made up the famine story to make it easier for the old man to understand. A famine in modern peaceful times would be borderline impossible. So he cleared up that what's coming in the next few days is the apocalypse, the end of modern civilization as they know it. Hearing that would make anyone feel crazy. It's a natural reaction to such a declaration. Looking at the clock, Xiaoyang reckoned that it should be about time to check the news and internet to see the initial signs of the end of times. Pulling her phone out and checking the news, a video of a man reciting some pretty ominous end-of-day stuff appeared front and center. It was a man being detained by authorities in a crowded train station. Some people said it was rabies, and the guy was biting other people. But the man seemed lucid enough to recite some grim stuff about a smoke with a strange smell. In the video, the detainee resisted being held down hard enough to break free and bite more people like a dog. It was pretty much chaos from then on. As Xiaoyang stated and expected, the initial signs of the apocalypse were already in full swing. Tomorrow will mark the official first day of the apocalypse. Toxic smoke will start to blanket several provinces, including Province B. All kinds of living beings will be affected by this unknown smoke. It will come to a point where a significant portion of the population will mutate into mindless zombies roaming the streets, looking for their next prey. As for the other portion that survives the smoke, they won't be spared by the cruelty of those zombies hungry for flesh. After dying an agonizing death, the victim will become one of them. Shanshan is part of the new generation, so she should have a general idea of what zombies are like. She does have some ideas based on films and pop culture in general, but it's hard to believe it is happening for real. But when the chaos officially kicks off tomorrow, the day after, or next week, everyone won't find the ideas so unbelievable. Unfortunately, they were caught in traffic when time was of the essence to get back to headquarters. It was so bad that even the emergency lane was blocked and backed up. The old man was starting to freak out as Mr. Jiang just mentioned zombies, and now they were in a stationary position. But Xiaoyang assured him that they should be safe for now. But even if the zombies won't be able to take over everything for a few days, the possibility of a small outbreak nearby would not be impossible. While every car was bumper to bumper, a luxury car sped through the emergency lane, passing everyone. When the traffic moved a little bit, the luxury car took the opportunity to cut Xiaoyang off. The bastard was driving so fast and recklessly that Xiaoyang nearly rammed into him had he not braked. He was pissed, and rightfully so. That guy had no concept of turn signals and just cut into the emergency lane like an idiot, endangering everyone. Feeling confrontational, the young man refused to swallow the disrespect he was handed. He didn't let the bastard enter his lane, blocking it off. Even after he deliberately showed that he wasn't letting the bastard in, the luxury car wasn't giving up. Everyone's stuck in the same traffic jam, and reckless drivers don't get a pass. The luxury car pulled up next to Xiaoyang's window and spouted some vile curses, looking like he was the one aggravated in this situation. The old man advised that they should just avoid trouble for now, as the reckless driver seemed wealthy and powerful. Xiaoyang didn't mind that though. If the bastard tried to step out and cause trouble, he wouldn't hesitate to paint the road with the rich man's blood. They were stuck in that traffic jam for almost an hour, but it fortunately cleared up. Looking at their rear, it seemed like the headaches had not stopped yet, as the luxury car from before was trying to cut in once again. It was deliberately chasing after them. Xiaoyang was starting to get pissed off now. The rich brat just wouldn't let it go. Whoever that bastard was, he's surely an unhinged person who willingly put his life and vehicle on the line just to be obnoxious on the road. He was tailgating and deliberately taunting them. It's your textbook road rage enjoyer. The old man urged Mr. Jiang to just let it go and not engage any further. Well, the Jiang Xiaoyang of the past might have let this bastard slide, but the apocalypse is due tomorrow. There would be no need to tolerate scumbags like that rich brat anymore. So, Xiaoyang played with the road rager for a little bit. He bet on the guy bitching out at the last second, and he came out on top. The rich brat nearly crashed on the hill nearby, and he had the gall to attribute it to the little punk from the traffic. The suited-up bastard immediately dialed traffic police to ask for surveillance footage. He wanted to track down Xiaoyong to show that the people at the top were not to be messed with. By the time the three reached the headquarters, it was already well into the night. As soon as they stepped out of the car, the old man looked at the compound with his mouth wide open in surprise at its scale. Shan commented that the whole place seemed a little too much. Xiaoyong told the two to get some rest. Starting tomorrow, everything they believed would be turned upside down as the world entered hardcore mode. That's what he said, but he looked pretty chill and comfortable in front of his viewing deck with a coffee in hand first thing in the morning. Shan had just woken up and found Xiaoyong nearby. It had been so long since she had a great sleep, and not having morning classes was a liberating feeling. Since she was already up, this would be an excellent time to take her on a tour around the fortress. They fetched Grandpa, and Xiaoyong gave them a tour around the facilities, where all walls were made of some serious, reinforced concrete. Each gate wouldn't cave without the use of heavy weaponry, as they were remote-controlled and made of 3 centimeters thick solid steel. Whether it was people or zombies, keeping anything out would be a cinch. He also reminded them that no one other than the 3 of them would be allowed inside the fortress without Xiaoyang's permission. Shan interpreted that as leaving other survivors who managed to reach this place to die outside with the undead. Xiaoyong did not answer outrightly. He just invited them to come to the next spot. He carefully explained that with the apocalypse underway, human nature would become even more unpredictable than it already was. The evil inside people's hearts would be magnified without laws. Having a big heart and compassion would only get them killed down the line. So, he led the two to view a spot that he had constructed. It looked like a fenced apartment complex with multiple shipping containers strewn around. He instructed that in the event he wasn't around and survivors came seeking help, they could be housed in this buffer zone as temporary shelter. Without his explicit permission, the ban on other people from the main fortress still stood. The old man concurred. The next stop on the tour would be the food storage. He would also point out which areas of their supply place could be rationed out to other people. Entering the warehouse filled with stacks upon stacks of essential supplies, it seemed like an absurd sight. Xiaoyong turned around, looking at them with intent. He proceeded to activate the mines to check their hostility status. After showing them the goods, fortunately, he saw happy faces on top of their heads. It should be safe to assume that this was a sign of trust. So he continued with the next showcase from his storage ring. While explaining that weapons were the most important thing in this apocalypse, he handed Shan a crossbow and the old man a shotgun. He reminded them to ensure that these weapons remain under their control, never falling into someone else's hands. It was only common sense to do so. Weapon security was a must unless they wanted chaos. While in the middle of the tour, Xiaoyong received a notification regarding a new system task. After reuniting with Shan, he was given another mission to reunite with another former comrade named Zhang Qi. This notification came as quite a shock to Xiaoyong. Looking at the city from the viewing deck, he saw an arrow indicating Zhang Qi's location. He was already planning to find his old friends, so this was a nice bonus. Before bolting off to take on the mission, he told the grandpa-granddaughter duo to remember the rules and never think of violating them. When asked where he was going, he entered his car and answered that he would be out to recruit and build up the team. The giant arrow indicating Zhang's location seemed to be pointing at a KTV bar. Inside one of the rooms, a group of friends were having fun, drinking and singing karaoke. The silver-haired Zhang Qi drunkenly stumbled out of the room with one of his boys to go to the restroom. After emptying their bladders, the two drunkenly stumbled out into the hallway. Being so inebriated, Zhang Qi accidentally bumped into a girl. It was a light bump, but the girl looked supremely irritated. Not thinking much of it, Zhang Qi immediately apologized, but the girl's escort did not take the whole thing well, calling Zhang Qi a punk. He kicked the young man indiscriminately. Zhang Qi stumbled into a nearby wall, falling on his ass, and it looked pretty painful. His buddy ran to his side to check if he was okay. He certainly didn't look like it. Glass's buddy had some balls to stand up for his friend, yelling at the violent thug for behaving so aggressively. Not used to people talking back to him, especially in front of his girl, the thug was infuriated. He lifted Glass's buddy by the collar, and the bastard was quite strong. Seeing the situation escalating, Zhang Qi tried his best to get back up and admit that he was at fault, pleading for the thug not to hit his buddy. Fortunately, a KTV staff member was walking around nearby. He was lamenting getting over stomach flu and immediately catching a cold, but the commotion caught his attention. It seemed like fights were quite commonplace in this bar, as drunk people just couldn't keep their hands to themselves. The staffer decided to step in to try and break up the fight, asking both parties to calm down. When the thug turned around, he looked offended to be stopped. He took it as disrespect, as even the KTV's owner would not dare touch his clothes. The heroic staff was now the target of the thug's anger, so he silently gestured for Zhang Qi and his buddy to hurry up and leave. The bastard thug demanded that the bar boss come out right away or he would shut the place down. Mr. Staffer tried to de-escalate, but it seemed ineffective as the college boys ran away. Back in karaoke room 3090, the two barged in as if they were being chased by a wild animal. Their other friends were naturally curious as to what was happening and why they were in such a frantic rush. Well, they bumped into a drunk thug who threatened to beat them up badly. They were lucky that one of the staff was quick-witted and kind enough to defuse the commotion. One of their friends stood up, telling them they should have put up a fight, as their mechanical engineering class should never back down. He wanted to call other guys from their department to retaliate. Zhang Qi stopped the hothead from doing so, as acting tough and looking for trouble when they had less than a year until graduation would be a stupid move. They should just keep singing, dancing, and celebrating. They did just that, but the trouble continued looking for them in the form of the drunk thug with his whole group. It looked like they beat on the server to find room 3090. The boys were naturally surprised that a group of unknown tough guys had just charged inside. The drunk thug threw the server like a rag doll and pointed at Zhang Qi and his friends, telling his boys to grab everyone. The college boys did not dare resist for fear of escalating the violence even more, so they surrendered. Seeing the fate of the beaten server made them shiver. The tough guy of mechanical engineering taunted the thugs, daring them to let him make one phone call. Grabbing a whiskey bottle, the drunk thugs stopped the tough guy from talking. He did so by smashing the full bottle in his hand against the tough guy's head. Tough guy's blood and the whiskey mixed as it flowed down to the floor, much to Zhang Qi's worry. Outside the KTV bar, a familiar car just pulled up to the entrance. Jiang Xiaoyong came out of his car with a smile, excited at the thought of seeing one of his old buddies from the first apocalypse. He was amused by how in character a KTV was for a college student version of Zhang Qi. He entered the premises, guided by the top-notch staff. Even when they faced the horrible end of the world for the first time around, Zhang Qi had always been the type of guy who still had the heart to sing. Chun Chong tried to act tougher than he really was, and all it got him was a painful head wound from a shattered liquor bottle. The thug turned to his lady, feeling full of himself, but she was not amused at all, as Chun Chong was not the one who bumped into her earlier. That was no problem at all since they could just smash Zhang Qi's head open all the same. However, it seemed that Chun Chong was quite resilient. Grabbing a metal ashtray, he fought through the pain to retaliate but was apprehended by the other thugs immediately. His guts both impressed and irritated the head thug. Using the fresh bottle in his hand, he delivered another brutal blow to the tough guy's head. Zhang Qi and his classmates could only watch as one of their friends got trashed. Not once but twice. Being the good buddy that he was, he ignored the armed thugs around and charged at the head thug tormenting them. While he and Glasses were bravely standing up for their friend, the remaining cowardly dude trembled in fear. But while they were getting beaten up, the injured KTV attendant started groggily standing. Despite the disadvantages in numbers, Zhang Qi actually held on quite well, giving the thugs a lot of trouble. While they were distracted trying to beat one another, the KTV attendant had already started abnormally mutating, losing his sanity. The zombie immediately ran up to where the largest clump of living flesh was, exhibiting extraordinary speed. One unfortunate thug just happened to be the nearest, so the infected attendant took a bite out of his back. Still aware of what was happening, the thug was just annoyed at the dog-like behavior of their first victim. Meanwhile, Zhang Qi's cowardly classmate was losing his mind out of terror instead of backing his friends up. Another thug tried to pull the attendant off his buddy's shoulder, but the bite was way too persistent, and the mutation had enhanced his physical strength. Suddenly, the infected turned around in one swift motion, letting go of one thug's shoulder and transferring the bite over to another thug's arm. The bite was painful, but the more troublesome part was the enhanced physical strength, making it impossible to shake the infected off. At this rate, everyone in the room would probably fall victim to the mutated attendant if a certain someone did not intervene. Yung Xiaorong stole the spotlight by grabbing the infected attendant by the back of its neck and lifting the beast in the air with a single arm. To neutralize the threat, he turned to the nearest glass wall and smashed the zombie right into it, shattering the glass. Xiaoyong turned to the warring thugs and students, telling everyone to stop what they were doing. His display of swift viciousness was quite effective in demanding their attention. The thugs reckoned that this stranger must be strong as hell since they could not even move the infected attendant with two people teaming up. Head Bastard was quite ineffective at reading the room, redirecting his anger towards the man who had just smashed an infected zombie with one hand. Ignoring the gangsters, Xiaoyong turned to Zhang Qi to ask if the young man was bitten. Stuttering in confusion, he replied that he was not bitten. None of them had a clue as to what was going on. Without further explanation, Xiaoyong just ordered his old friend from a previous life to come with him. For some reason, Zhang Qi felt compelled to follow, but was stopped by the head thug, who still thought that he was the top dog in this situation. Before another fight could erupt, one of the bitten gangsters started coughing severely while complaining about a severe headache, making his head spin. Xiaoyong could spot the early signs of mutation from a mile away, and this guy was exhibiting every symptom aside from the massive bite wound on his shoulder. He also complained about having a runny nose earlier in the day. While still holding the infected zombie by the neck, Xiaoyong confirmed that the thug was bitten. The signs of rot and infection were already visibly spreading from the wound itself. He was a lock for infection, and with the bite so close to the nervous system, the spread would only accelerate. The thug was bound to mutate sooner, and they could not afford to deal with two infected zombies in such a close space. So, Xiaoyong started moving, dragging the resisting zombie, drawing everyone's eyes to his following action. Upon arriving near the door, he chucked the infected attendant inside the restroom. He immediately pulled the sliding door closed, effectively trapping the infected inside. The infected zombie was quite rowdy, immediately getting up to aggressively bang on the door. Thankfully, zombies in the early days had not yet learned how to open doors. Everyone in the room looked at Xiaoyong with puzzled expressions. With the threat of the infected zombie effectively neutralized, Xiaoyong's demeanor shifted to an even more aggressive one, as he asked Zhang Qi which one of these thugs needed to catch his hands. The young man was still confused as to who Xiaoyong was since they didn't even know each other at this point. Head Bastard, with his bruised ego, charged and expecting to teach some cocky, brat the gangster way. But Xiaoyong just looked at him like he was looking at a harmless kid. Before the head thug could land his pathetic attack, Xiaoyong had already grabbed him by the face, digging his fingers into his skin, pushing forward until he found a target. Xiaoyong smashed the head thug into the glass table in the middle of the room. The bitten thug with the mortal shoulder wound immediately ran in to avenge his boss. Xiaoyong fixed his stance and landed a quick blow to the gangster's face. With one swift motion, the thug laid flat on his back, his consciousness fading away. Then came the next stage of infection, as the gangster started foaming at the mouth while seemingly having a seizure. His buddy worriedly checked on the guy. One punch should not be enough to put anyone into this bizarre state. Nevertheless, it was an effective show of strength. If anyone else wanted a one-piece combo to go, Xiaoyong would gladly take volunteers. While adjusting his fists for a beatdown, Xiaorong advised Zhang Qi to take his friends and wait outside the KTV room. They gladly complied, lending their shoulders to the injured Chun Chong and getting out of there as fast as they could. The gangsters wanted to do the same, carrying their injured brothers who were slowly succumbing to the infection. However, Xiaorong stood firm at the door, not letting them pass. Head Bastard tried to intimidate him but failed miserably. They must have gotten so drunk that they acted like gods and nearly got his brother Zhang Qi killed. Not wasting any more breath on these lowlives, Xiaorong easily pushed the head thug down, infuriating the egomaniac gangster. Afterward, Xiaorong immediately left, slamming the door in their faces to let nature take its course. Head Bastard began crazily banging on the door, calling Xiaorong all kinds of names while threatening to skin him alive. Unbeknownst to him, one of his men had already succumbed to the infection. The zombie bite near his nervous system had hastened the process. Upon opening his eyes, they had already turned bloodshot and crimson, with no signs of sanity or control left. The infected gangster lunged forward to attack his boss, attracted by the banging on the door. Xiaorong made sure to hold the door handle securely, as the infected gangster kneed and chewed at his friends. To make matters worse, the zombie attendant locked in the bathroom had also figured out how doors worked. Xiaorong could hear the carnage from the hallway. Curious, one of the KTV employees hesitantly approached Xiaorong, and he urgently tasked the employee to get the keys and lock the door, not letting anyone enter. They were also to call the police and paramedics, citing a case of rabies flu inside the room. Hearing the seriousness in the young man's voice and the mention of rabies flu alarmed the employee. He was in a daze, so Xiaorong had to yell at him a second time to act fast, as they didn't have time to wait. The KTV room was securely locked from the outside, with the unintelligible grumbles of the infected gangsters audible from the hallway. As for Zhang Qi and friends, Xiaorong invited them to follow him for now, leaving the KTV employees to deal with the aftermath of what had just transpired. The employee who locked the door couldn't help but be creeped out by the inhuman noises coming from inside. One of his colleagues curiously approached, asking what the chaos was about. The mention of rabies flu would alarm anyone who heard it, and so they decided to run to the security room and check out the live security footage. As soon as they arrived at the security room, the live feed showed the stuff nightmares are made of. It was a gore fest of infected monstrosities feasting on their dead friends. The insanity in their eyes was terrifying as they gnawed on flesh and blood. Even the girl was not spared. Her face was bitten and eaten. This footage certainly lit a fire under the security team to call the cops. Meanwhile, Xiaorong warned the college friends that the area was not safe anymore and that they must leave as soon as possible. Not sure what to do, they willingly entered Xiaorong's car, and they went on their way to the off-grid base camp. Zhang Qi thanked Xiaorong for helping them against those thugs, but they still hadn't been properly introduced, so he was a little apprehensive. Zhang Xiaorong formally introduced himself and lied about the fact that he had been hired by an anonymous employer to protect Zhang Qi. The coward of the group curiously asked if the rabies flu was confirmed, as he had seen people debunk the hoax on the internet not too long ago. Xiaorong simply cited what they had seen back in the KTV room. There was no other logical explanation for it. Glasses fearfully asked if there was any medicine or vaccine against this rabies flu they were talking about. Xiaorong stared at the boys from the rearview mirror while driving and gave it to them straight. The disaster wouldn't end, and it would only get worse. In other words, they were already in the midst of the apocalypse. Speaking of the apocalypse, they just happened to pass by more blatant evidence of what was happening. At the side of the road, an infected man was chasing after a pedestrian, fearing for his life. The current situation in the city could still be considered just a small outbreak in isolated areas, as the majority of infected people were still in the incubation phase. But soon, the epidemic would spiral out of control on a massive scale. If the boys wanted to survive, they had to listen to everything Xiaorong said from now on. fearing for their lives and feeling indebted to the reliable stranger. They promised Brother Xiaoyong that they would listen to him. Rescuing and gaining Zhang's trust finally gave Xiaoyong the pass to his mission, rewarding him with 20 system points. Now was the perfect time to secure more resources, so he was excited to see the new loot boxes in the shop. There was an Apocalypse Farmer box, Armed Deterrence box, and food supply boxes to splurge his points on. He had already seen the Apocalypse Farmer box, so it seemed like he would need to either refresh or buy it to open spots for new stuff. Nevertheless, every one of these boxes seemed useful and was not too expensive. Xiaoyong planned to redeem all of them once he got back to the fortress, sneakily stealing glances at the college boys. One more tricky problem came to his mind. In their past life, Zhang Qi was betrayed by one of his dorm mates, leading to the deaths of multiple people at the brutal hands of zombies. Zhang Qi was the only one who barely survived, but the betrayal changed him fundamentally. As for the traitor who got everyone killed, it should be one of these bozos sitting in Xiaoyong's back seat. On the other side of town, Cui Jing was on a phone call with the man she lovingly referred to as Honey. The witch had been feeling anxious, as she was promised some supplies. Things were starting to get crazy in her area, and she was too scared to go to the store herself. The sucker kept on promising that he would bring stuff over as soon as he was able. Suddenly, a knock on her door nearly gave Cui Jing a heart attack. She hung up the phone and slowly approached the entrance with bated breath, carefully peering through the peephole. She finally saw who was on the other side. She sighed in relief as she let her witch friend in. She also felt uneasy when she heard that the old grandpa named Lu from the building's first floor had been taken away earlier today. Taken away by a police car and an ambulance. Trying to keep the matter on the low, it made sense as Cui Jing could hear all the chaos from downstairs earlier that morning. The girls were starting to believe that the rabies flu news was not just some scare tactic. As for Li Shuxiong's promised supply delivery, it still had not arrived. Her friend had already warned Cui Jing that the greasy Shuxiong couldn't be trusted, but they could at least use Shuxiong to ransack Xiaoyong's large stockpile of supplies, enough to make a fortune in the middle of the epidemic. The last time she failed to seduce the guy and got kicked out by Xiaoyong, she sent one of her simps to keep an eye on him in secret. So she received reports of trucks regularly dropping supplies at that abandoned factory he refurbished. That would only make sense if Xiaoyong somehow knew about the upcoming epidemic early on. And so the two witches devised a plan to use Shuxiong to ransack the place, taking a cut of Xiaoyong's riches by force. Xiaoyong pulled up to the base camp without encountering any further problems along the way. The boys also got out of the car, taking in the view of what Xiaoyong had impressively built in such a short time. Zhang Qi could not hide his excitement and amazement at the unbelievable scale of the base camp. It would be more appropriate to call it a fortress at this point. Xiaoyong just smiled at his old friend's reaction. That's pretty much how everyone reacts at first sight. The noise of their car also prompted the other tenants of the fortress to check things out with their weapons in hand. Grandpa and Shanshan were just glad to see Xiaoyong return in one piece. The young man assured them that he was fine and called the boys over to introduce them as the new members of the fortress. So he just referred to the other boys as Zhang Qi's classmates. Grandpa and Shanshan cheerfully introduced themselves too, welcoming the newcomers to the safety of the fortress. Then Xiaoyong tasked Grandpa with taking a few guys to show them around the area and explain their rules and regulations in detail. Glasses couldn't help but feel like they had just entered some military base camp. Before touring the place, the coward meekly demanded everyone's attention. First, he asked if they could be issued some weapons too, so they could contribute to defending the massive place. Xiaoyong shot him a glare of suspicion. They had not been here for a whole hour, and the guy was already requesting to be armed. Wasn't that Susie? Glasses whispered to Yiming, the coward, to stop being so eager to get weapons, as they were the newcomers here, demanding something like that requires a degree of trust first. To shut Yiming's demands down, Xiaoyong promised that everyone would get weapons in a few more days. Also, Chun Chong's head injuries were severe, so he should be checked in the medical room first for treatment. After a few hours, the boys finally managed to shower off the booze and the tension from the life-or-death scenario. Yiming turned to Glasses and annoyingly asked why he had stopped his demands for weapons earlier. He reckoned that if Glasses had not intervened, maybe they would have guns in their hands right about now. The audacity of this coward to stand up and make a speech about how it would be best to be protected given the current situation was laughable. Without firearms, he even compared being in this fortress to being under house arrest. Thankfully, Glasses had some common sense and gratitude for being saved from the jaws of the infected. Yiming continued trying to sow a sense of distrust in his classmates, putting Xiaoyong's background into question, as the guy only claimed that he was hired by an anonymous client for protection. Yiming rightfully poked holes in the story, as it did not seem to make any sense. He gritted his teeth and brought up Chun Chong's treatment too. Xiaoyong promised to monitor their buddy's injury, but the medical room had more security features than a prison cell. Yiming spouted the poisonous idea that Xiaoyong might be conspiring to harvest their friend's organs in that sterile room without them knowing. So he was determined to recruit more dumbasses to his cause and strike first against their savior. Glasses heavily opposed the idea, not wanting to betray Xiaoyong after he had taken them to safety. Yiming asserted that he would rather betray the world than let the world betray him. So he wanted to take over the fortress and seize control of the entire area. Besides them and that Xiaoyong guy, there was only an old man and a young girl. Yiming reckoned that if Xiaoyong went away, they could capture the old man and the girl. The girl just happened to be pretty cute too, and Yiming wanted some of that. The boys just looked at him with disgust and contempt. Fortunately, Glasses and Zhangqi were not that type of guy. Realizing that they weren't biting on his plan, Yiming waved his hand and laughed, playing off what he had just said as a joke that should not be taken seriously. Zhangqi naively accepted that half-ass excuse at face value. The apocalypse had not even gotten into full swing yet, and Yiming was already scheming about degenerate lawless deeds. Glasses also added that if Xiaoyong wanted to harvest their organs, they would have been helplessly locked up by now. As the other two exited the showers, Yiming deemed them not worthy of conspiring with. He believed that in chaotic times, one must be ruthless, even though he trembled at the sight of blood while his buddies were throwing hands with gangsters earlier. Yiming wanted to turn them into lackeys for life once he took over. Grandpa reported that Zhangqi and the others had started settling in. As for the injured Chun Chong, he was also in recovery as instructed. All doors and windows had also been secured. Xiaoyong thanked Grandpa Shenhua and Shanshan for their hard work, telling them to get some rest, for they didn't know what tomorrow would be. Before they went, Xiaorong also warned the two to keep a close eye on Zhangqi's other two classmates, citing that he felt some traitorous vibes among them. In the dead of night, Xiaoyong went straight to his warehouse to settle some stuff. He opened the system's item shop and gave the offerings a thorough inspection. Clicking on all of the offered products, he successfully redeemed the Level 1 Apocalypse Farmer Box for 2 points, the Level 1 Food Supply Box for 5 points, and the Level 1 Armed Deterrent Supply Box for another 5 points, leaving him with 8 points remaining. The Apocalypse Farmer Box contained 50 corn seeds. The food supply box awarded him 200 kilograms of starch sausage, 100 kilograms of pre-cooked braised pork with preserved vegetables, and 50 boxes of pickled cabbage noodles. As for the armed deterrent box, it contained a whopping 1,500 rounds of 9mm ammunition. He dumped the rewards from the boxes in one pile. Seeing the sheer size of the pile was quite impressive in and of itself. It was not as good as spending money freely now in the coming resource-scarce apocalypse, but supplies are supplies. They're invaluable. The next day came, and the morning started with multiple vehicles pulling up to the gate of the fortress. They confirmed that they had the correct address and started setting up their plan. What came out of the vehicles were multiple armed men sporting blades. As a man wearing a suit finished his phone call, after hanging up, The suit ordered his men to break the gate down with all their might. The stupid army started bashing the steel gates with their bats and tried to kick them down with their feet. After a few minutes of trying to no avail, they complained that the door was too thick and they would not be able to break it down with the equipment they brought. Mr. Suit felt infuriated. He came here expecting to burst through the door of a normal house, only to get stopped at the entrance. So he ordered his men to bring out the big guns, and they hurriedly carried off wooden crates filled with their secret weapons. Instead of explosives or high-caliber guns, the contents of the crates were actually multiple wine bottles. The stupid army fashioned them into handy Molotov cocktails and started chucking them over the gates. The rain of fire just landed in the yard, not even reaching the apartment complex on the other side. Still, the Molotov cocktails caused quite a stir as they burned high and bright. First thing in the morning, after blindly tossing the fiery wine bottles all over the place, some had finally managed to hit the roof of the outer apartment complex. Shanshan, Zhangqi, and the others finally noticed what was happening and came out with fire extinguishers and buckets of water in hand. Xiaoyong had already warned them about something like this. The disaster had not fully hit yet, and extreme situations were already unfolding. While the youngsters dealt with the fire, Xiaoyong and Grandpa Xinhua emerged from the warehouse with an assault rifle and a shotgun, respectively. They went straight to the watchtower to get a visual of the villains causing chaos and looking for trouble outside the gate. Upon arriving at the top, Grandpa Xinhua commented that the guy in the suit and the car at the forefront seemed awfully familiar. If he remembered correctly, it was the guy who had a road rage incident with them on the highway a few days ago. One of the thugs finally noticed someone standing on the watchtower from afar. He immediately notified his boss that the one they were looking for had finally shown his face, the little punk who had dared to provoke him on the road. Mr. Suit screamed and cursed at the top of his lungs, making sure that his sentiments and insults would be heard from way up the tower. He threatened to burn the doghouse down if Xiaoyong didn't come out. The young man calmly responded by giving Mr. Suit and his lackey 5 minutes to get the hell out of his property or else. These gangsters did not respond well to threats. They just heard a brat telling them to piss off, which got them riled up. The time for words had passed, and they would rather bring out 2 more crates of Molotov cocktails to do the talking. Suddenly, Xiaoyong received a new task from his system. While Grandpa Xing was stressed over whether they should fire a warning shot or something, Xiaoyong was busy reading his new mission. The task demanded that the threats be eliminated as quickly as possible for 10 points. Seeing the reward, Xiaoyong immediately abandoned the idea of warning shots. These intruders were criminal gangsters. Order in society hadn't broken down yet, and they were already committing heinous crimes. They could not care less if someone got burned to death by their stunt. Xiaoyong believed that leaving scum alive during the apocalypse would only harm more innocent people in the long run, even endangering them. So, he started aiming. Without hesitation, the young man pulled the trigger, and his bullet went for the first blood. The first hit landed on Mr. Suit's arms, stunning him and rendering him speechless and terrified. The agonized scream of their boss as he clutched his severed arm made the thugs realize that they must have messed with the wrong people. Xiaoyong, still cool as a cucumber, was actually frustrated that he missed a supposedly sure-kill shot. He must have gotten rusty after reliving a peaceful life for too long. The thugs saw the assault rifle in his hands and hurriedly retreated to the cover of their vehicles. The first one to run was the boss, but Xiaoyong was the type of guy who obsessively follows through once he gets started. Aiming more accurately this time, he began picking off the retreating thugs one by one. They rained fire on his property, so he rained lead on their chests and heads. It was a slaughter. The boss must have felt all the adrenaline in his body pumping so hard that he managed to reach one of the vehicles for cover. As soon as he got inside, he ordered the driver to get the hell out of this place, not minding the bleeding stump he used to call his arm. Grandpa Xinhua worriedly looked at the escaping car, but this was no cause for concern. This is precisely why Xiaoyong grabbed the automatic rifle out of the armory. carefully aiming at the retreating vehicle. He tracked their movement while continuously emptying magazine after magazine of high-caliber bullets piercing through. Grandpa watched as the young man continuously aimed, fired, emptied his load, and reloaded without a single wasted motion. The way the kid hip-fired and reloaded was so smooth that even during his military service, Grandpa Sheng's Hebo had never seen someone so efficient. After emptying a few more magazines, things finally quieted down in the vicinity of the fortress. The fires had also been successfully extinguished. Corpses of thugs littered the road leading directly to the fortress gate. The getaway vehicle was busted and broke down. Everyone inside was riddled with bullets. Xiaoyong nonchalantly ordered Grandpa to call Zhang Qi and his buddies to come out and clean up the dead gangsters at the front door. On second thought, there might be a better way to make use of this little incident. Since it's still the early days of the apocalypse, maybe he could let the corpses below mutate into zombies and use them as practical targets to develop Zhang Qi and Shanshan's combat prowess. So, he told Grandpa to ignore his previous command and leave the thugs lying dead in the middle of the road for his more extensive plans for the future. Not far from the fortress, another batch of cars and vans drove closer and closer. Li Shuxiong was inside one of the white cars, impatiently inquiring whether they were close to the site or not. Cui Jing put on her cute, playful voice and cheerfully responded that they should arrive after the next intersection. She was sitting with her in the back seat. She actually felt irritated by the cutesy act that Cui Jing always performed when this deadbeat Xiaoyong was around. A witch knows when another witch is playing the game. Upon reaching the outskirts of the fortress, they pulled up, and Cui Jing told Shuxiong to wait while she made her way inside. As soon as Cui Jing got out of the car, she tried to rope her friend into her scheme too. She claimed that she was the only one who knew what factory Xiaoyang was holed up in. Not wanting to get out of the car, she claimed that it was the factory up ahead, which was pretty hard to miss. Besides, her shoes were not fit for walking too far. But Cui Jing was quite persistent. She even went as far as dragging her friend out of the car, ignoring her pleas to even get her phone. Ultimately, she was forced to tag along with her witchy friend, even though she did not want to get involved any further. Back in the car, Li Shuxiong called his boys to get ready. At any moment, he would take the lead, and as soon as his car started, the boys in the van were to follow. The vans were packed with a mix of young men and veteran gangsters alike, ready to invade the fortress, even though they did not know what they were walking into. Her friend complained that she did not want to get dragged into this mess, but Cui Jing could see through her sly moves, thinking that she was making a move on her gangster sugar daddy. They had schemed and scammed together for far too long not to know every trick in the book. But she got it all wrong. She actually dressed up and dolled up in hopes of hooking the loser Jiang Xiaoyong, since Cui Jing was already compromised with her affairs. Walking up to the gate, the girls finally noticed the grisly scene up ahead. The road was filled with corpses with bullet wounds throughout their bodies, so it was fair to assume that they died from a shootout. She was deathly scared, urging Cui Jing to just go back and abandon the plan. Judging by the blood, it seemed like the corpses had been there for a while now. Cui Jing reckoned that these were two groups fighting over Jiang Xiaoyong's supplies. If these hardened criminals died in the process, then it would be safe to assume that loser Xiaoyong probably did not make it out alive too. It didn't really matter if he died, they just needed the priceless supplies. Xiaoya, being the voice of reason, wanted to let Li Shuxiong and his boys handle this mess, but Cui Jing wanted to sneak over and see if the factory gate was locked. Unbeknownst to the girls, the gangster corpses had already started mutating with the inherent virus in their system.
Cui Jing and Zayoa walked up to the huge gates of the fortress and thought about how they would get in. They were really nervous because of how exposed they were in the open. Zayoa said that they couldn't see anything inside because of how tightly the gate was shut. Seeing how reinforced and tight the security was, Cui Jing wondered if Xiaoyong was okay. While they were still fiddling with the gate, a voice called out to them and they panicked. Looking up, they saw Shanshan with her crossbow, and she asked them who they were and how they knew about the fortress. Zayoa said that they were friends with Xiaoyong, and Cui Jing told her that she was Xiaoyong's girlfriend. Quite the audacious statement. Shanshan didn't trust the two girls, so she called out to Xiaoyong and told him that there were two witches outside his gate. She also told him that one of them claimed to be his girlfriend, which she highly doubted. Cui Jing was pissed off and felt that Xiaoyong had suddenly changed his attitude because he had found a new girlfriend, whom she thought was Shanshan. Zayoa told her to calm down and not to show any displeasure because they still had important matters to handle. She asked if Li Shuxiong would be able to handle the ambush, considering that Shanshan had a crossbow in her hands. Cui Jing told her friend that Li Shuxiong would be able to handle it because he brought a few pistols. She was confident that he would be able to take down Xiaoyong once the gates were open, but her expression showed that she was very angry that Xiaoyong had another girl that he was taking care of. Xiaoyong finally came out and questioned the girls from the top of the tower. He called them by their names and asked what they were doing at his fortress. He was obviously disgusted at their presence. Xiaoyong quickly activated the Eye of Insight ability to check if they were really friends or foes. Zayoa said that they were friends and asked if it was a bad thing to come check up on him. She tried her best to play the role of an innocent girl, saying that things were very chaotic at the time and they were worried about him. Zayoa then asked Xiaoyong if he didn't care about them anymore. Despite her attempts to act friendly, Xiaoyong's ability already showed him that they were definitely planning to harm him. Without a moment's hesitation, he called their bluff and laughed at the idea of them being worried about him. He already suspected that Li Shuxiong was probably nearby and asked the girls how many people he brought and what weapons they had. Zayoa and Cui Jing were completely speechless. They couldn't even defend themselves, and they wondered how he already knew about their plans. Before the girls could think of words to say, Xiaoyong fired at them with his gun, and he made it obvious that he fired a warning shot. They thought he had gone completely insane for actually shooting at them. The two girls couldn't fathom why Xiaoyong had become so hostile towards them. Zayoa tried to get Cui Jing to speak calmly because Xiaoyong was still the one pointing a gun at them. Cui Jing, being an idiot, asked what there was to be afraid of. She wanted to know if Xiaoyong would actually shoot her dead. Xiaoyong laughed at them and said that it would be too easy to shoot them dead. Left to him, there were more treacherous things that could have been done to those girls. Their situation only got worse when they turned back because they started hearing strange noises from the truck behind them. The mutant zombies had started slowly approaching them. Cui Jing questioned if they were rabbit flu patients. The zombies had their eyes fixed on the girls, and it was only a matter of time before they became repulsive creatures like them. Zayoa wondered if the rabbit flu was able to bring dead people back to life. Xiaoyong looked at the horrible situation they were in and said that he would let the girls die at the hands of the zombies. The mindless zombies roared furiously and rushed toward the poor girls. As they dove to tackle Zayoa and Cui Jing, the girls were able to escape and started running for their lives. The girls ran as fast as they could back to Li Shuxiong's car. They yelled his name as they got closer to the car, and he wound down the windows to figure out what was going on. Tears and sweat dripped down from their faces as the zombies got closer to them. Cui Jing yelled for Li Shuxiong to come to save her, but it was looking like it was the end of the road for them. They weren't expecting the tables to turn on them so drastically. Li Shuxiong panicked as he saw how terrible the situation was. He asked how it was possible for the rabbit flu patients to have been outside the fortress. At that moment, he spoke to his goons over the walkie-talkie and yelled at them to turn around as quickly as possible. He needed to move quickly before the infection would get into his body and mutate him into one of them. The cars quickly swerved around and fled the scene. Cui Jing cursed out Li Shuxiong for abandoning her and Zayoa to the treacherous claws of the monsters. The distance between the girls and the vehicles was far greater than the distance between them and the zombies. There was no hope for them, and the situation called for desperate measures to be taken. Just when it looked like the curtains had closed on them, Cui Jing said that she didn't want to die. As she raised her handbag, she tossed it toward Zayoa's legs, and the poor girl's legs got entangled in the handle. You really can't trust anyone during an apocalypse. Zayoa lost her balance and fell face flat on the ground. She screamed out in pain as her face hit the cold, rough road. That was how Zayoa's life flashed before her eyes. She became an easy target for the vile creatures, and they quickly piled on her before she could get up. Her eyes were filled with fear, and her heart beat so fast that it could have probably broken through her rib cage. She told the zombies to wait, but she forgot that she wasn't talking to people who could be reasoned with. Her blood was spilled, and sounds of bones being crunched could be heard as the zombies feasted on her. Her vision quickly turned red, and all she saw were mindless creatures eating her up like a happy meal. In her last moments of consciousness, she looked toward Cui Jing with boiling rage and rained curses on the girl for setting her up like that. She called Cui Jing all kinds of names, but it did little to help her already sealed fate. Choking on her blood, Zayoa swore that Cui Jing would never die a good death no matter how long it would take, the crazy witch would definitely get what she deserved. Cui Jing chose to ignore all the words hurled at her as she fled the scene. The cold sweat dripping from her face and the deranged look she had. Cui Jing told herself that Zayoa deserved every single thing that was happening to her at that moment. She kept repeating the words to herself in order to feel better about the atrocity she had just committed. Meanwhile, Xiaoyong and Shanshan watched the gory scene from the top of their tower. While Xiaoyong was unfazed by what he was looking at, Shanshan was deeply disturbed, and she couldn't believe her eyes. The system then awarded Xiaoyong 10 points for taking care of the threats that befell his fortress. With that done, it quickly gave him a new task, which was to clear the area of the infected monsters who were lurking around his base. Shanshan then turned her attention to Xiaoyong and was shocked that all those people had mutated into zombies just like that. The thought of it caused her mind to become very troubled, and she wondered what the future would look like if this was just the beginning of the apocalypse. Xiaoyong remained very calm and told her that the apocalypse had officially begun. With a large amount of alien infection sources in the air, the dead who were exposed outside would quickly mutate into zombies. But it didn't just stop there. Anyone who was injured and those with weak constitutions among the living were also at a high risk of getting infected. Shanshan found it hard to grasp all the information Xiaoyong was giving her, but she eventually understood that things were like that for them. After that, Xiaoyong told her to call everyone together for a meeting. She looked at him and was baffled at how someone could remain so calm in such hard times. Moments later, everyone in the fortress gathered in a room. Shanshan locked the door while the others sat down and waited for what Xiaoyong had to say. Yiming, who was obviously still very hostile, refused to sit and decided to stand while the meeting went on. Xiaoyong informed them that they would have to remain indoors for the next 2 days unless it was absolutely necessary for them to step out. He emphasized that they should keep the doors and windows tightly shut to allow their bodies to gradually adapt to the infection. Xiaoyong had explained that the body seemed able to fight the infection better when it was introduced slowly, as opposed to when the virus overwhelmed the body all at once. He further noted that following these rules strictly would greatly reduce their risk of mutation. Zhang Qi, however, was very worried about his friend Chong. Based on his expression, it appeared that Chang's condition was not improving. Later that night, in the infirmary, Chong was lying on the bed, clearly in a lot of pain. Part of his face and body were slowly turning purple, a sign that the mutation was taking over his body. It was feared that if things worsened, they might have to end Chang's suffering. The mutation had spread to his arms, with bulging veins, and cold sweat ran down his forehead as he gritted his teeth in agony. Only time would reveal his fate. In a chaotic scene outside a tall skyscraper with dark smoke swirling around its facade, people in business attire were seen panicking and running away, suggesting an emergency or disaster situation. One man shouted in distress while others fled towards a yellow taxi. Shengzhe, with a worried expression, observed the chaos from a window and remarked that it was complete chaos outside. He was watching a dangerous situation unfold. In a tense moment, Shengzhe urged his wife and child that they needed to go to the warehouse that night to retrieve the remaining supplies. He instructed Xiao Li, his wife, and Shuai, his son, to stay at home and not open the door for anyone except him, emphasizing the importance of caution and safety in what seemed to be a dangerous situation. Shengzhe's determined and tense expression reflected his urgency as he prepared to leave, while the woman protectively held the child. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. Shengzhe, with a serious expression, signaled for silence by raising a finger to his lips. The woman, anxious, held the child close, who covered his mouth, reflecting a situation that required them to remain quiet and alert due to the potential danger outside. Shengzhe cautiously opened the door, holding a golf club in case of a threat. A voice called out, asking if brother Shengzhe was home, indicating someone was looking for Shengzhe. Shengzhe exhaled in relief upon recognizing the voice and remarked that it was young Tao, visibly easing his worries, realizing there was no immediate danger. Shengzhe opened the door, but was suddenly kicked in the chest and fell backward with a pained expression. In shock and anger, Shengzhe demanded to know what was happening. He was quickly restrained and attacked by a group of individuals. He struggled on the ground, attempting to fight off his assailants. Young Tao loomed over him with a stern expression, asserting his control over the situation. Shengzhe, feeling betrayed, exclaimed that he had treated young Tao well. His disbelief and hurt were clear as he struggled to understand why he had been betrayed by someone he trusted. Young Tao, with a mocking smile, retorted that Shengzhe only ever saw him as a lackey. His posture and words revealed deep resentment. Shengzhe, in frustration, questioned whether young Tao had any conscience, reminding him of how he had helped him save for his house down payment. Young Tao, now standing confidently, expressed his indignation, reminding Shengzhe that while he had contributed to the down payment, he himself had earned enough for several houses. He demanded the keys and the address to the warehouse, making it clear that he intended to take control. Shengzhe, still on the ground, gritted his teeth in frustration. Young Tao, with a smug expression, commented that Shengzhe was still being stubborn. In the background, the woman clung protectively to the child, both appearing worried and vulnerable, highlighting the tension. Young Tao aggressively grabbed the woman by her hair, forcing her to look at Shengzhe, commanding him to watch. The child, in shock and fear, desperately pleaded with young Tao to let go of his mother, shouting in a mix of fear and anger. His emotional distress was evident as he tried to protect his mother. In a desperate act, the child bit young Tao's arm. Young Tao reacted angrily, berating the child and accusing him of going crazy. The child was forcefully thrown back, crying out in pain as his mother watched in horror. Shengzhe, still on the ground, glared defiantly at young Tao, challenging him to come after him instead and leave his wife and child alone. Young Tao, with a smirk, assured Shengzhe that as long as he cooperated, his family would be safe. Then he commanded Shengzhe to lead them to the warehouse. Young Tao and his group, standing confidently in the doorway, surveyed the area with an air of dominance. Young Tao inspected a few remaining boxes and questioned whether that was all that was left. Shengzhe, facing away, responded defensively, reminding him that he had been the one to secure those big clients, and now everything had been sold off, including the near expiry and expired food. Young Tao, deep in thought, seemed to be devising a plan to capitalize on Xiaoyong's resources, his ambitious and cunning expression revealing his bold intentions. Shengzhe advised the others to stay away from him while he was delivering goods. He accidentally noticed that he was carrying a gun, and his serious expression, along with his furrowed brow, indicated the danger he perceived, while the person beside him listened attentively. He continued, suggesting that the man must have somehow gotten wind of the impending disaster ahead of time. Young Tao, dismissively addressing the man, remarked that it was his problem to deal with. His posture was confident and uncaring, with his arms crossed and a smug expression, indicating that he had no intention of getting involved in the complications or risks mentioned. Yong looked down with a cold expression, while Shengzhe, standing behind him, reacted with surprise, asking what he meant. Yang Tao responded with a manipulative offer, suggesting that they take Xiaoyong's supplies in exchange for ensuring the safety of Shengzhe's wife and child, calling it a fair trade. His proposal placed Shengzhe in a difficult position. With a tense and conflicted expression, his brows furrowed and mouth set in a grim line, Shengzhe's eyes conveyed a mixture of anger and frustration. At Xiaoyong Fortress, a wide view of a large industrial complex or facility situated on a hillside captured a tense confrontation. Xiaoyong and his group, including Zhang Qi, faced someone off-screen, their expressions ranging from stern to determined, suggesting they were confronting a challenge or standing up against a threat. His friend in the foreground, seen from behind, appeared to be seated, while the aggressive voice of him state of extreme distress or anger shouted at them. He appeared to be strapped or restrained in a chair. His body was tense, with veins bulging, and his mouth wide open in a fierce expression. Glasses in the foreground looked tense and serious, crying. Behind him, one person appeared worried, while another shielded his face, indicating discomfort or distress at the noise. Zhang Qi's friend, with a serious and determined expression and sweat dripping down his face, commanded to kill him. His intense gaze and the cold, resolute tone of his words suggested a pivotal moment in which he was making a grave decision. Xiaoyong looked serious as he gazed off to the side, while in the background, the other man watched him closely. Zhang Qi, looking surprised and slightly angry, asked what he had just said, his expression suggesting disbelief or shock. Beside him, glasses added to the tension in the scene. Yiming stated seriously that the restrained individual was already dead and that if they didn't finish him off now and he somehow broke free, everyone's life would be in danger. His tone was pragmatic but cold, reflecting his focus on the perceived threat. In contrast, Glasses passionately argued that the restrained man was their brother and that they were giving up on him without even trying. His reaction underscored the emotional conflict. Xiaoyong calmly stated that his friend was right. Once someone turned, there was almost no chance of recovery, referring to the restrained individual in the bed who was visibly in distress or transformation. Glasses, looking troubled and hesitant, Xiaoyong gripped the hilt of a sheathed knife, poised and ready to draw it. His confident grip and the slight shine on the blade suggested imminent action. Xiaoyong handed a knife to Yiming, instructing him with a calm but firm tone to use it. Yiming, taken aback, responded nervously, asking what he meant, his wide-eyed expression and hesitant posture indicating his shock and reluctance. Xiaoyong, with a calm yet serious expression, commanded him to finish him off. His gaze was steady, showing no hesitation, indicating his resolve in making a difficult decision. In the background, the restrained individual was seen in distress, further intensifying the gravity of the situation. Yiming, with a conflicted and tense expression, held a knife close as he hesitated to act. Sweat dripped down his face, and his mouth was set in a grimace, reflecting his internal struggle and fear. Xiaoyong sternly spoke to Yiming, stating that he had always wanted a weapon. He urged Yiming to take the weapon and put Brother Chong out of his misery. His intense gaze and commanding tone emphasized his insistence, pushing Yiming to take decisive action. Yiming being addressed looked uncertain and distressed, with a bead of sweat on his face, highlighting his hesitation and internal conflict. Xiaoyong gave the knife to Yiming, but Zhang Qi grabbed the weapon with urgency and force. Zhang Qi looked serious and determined, while those on either side appeared conflicted and anxious. Zhang Qi, gripping the knife tightly, declared that he would do it. His determined look and firm stance indicated that he had made up his mind, ready to take on the difficult task at hand. Zhang Qi, tense and uneasy as he held the knife, showed anxiety and uncertainty on his face as sweat dripped down. Xiaoyong, holding the knife, questioned Zhang Qi intensely, asking if he had truly considered their actions. He hinted at the possibility that everything he had previously said might have been deceitful and warned that taking this step could lead them to be seen as murderers. He was testing Zhang Qi's resolve in this critical moment. Zhang Qi expressed determination, saying he trusted Brother Xiaoyong. Behind him, Yiming looked on with a mix of concern and unease, reflecting the high stakes and uncertainties surrounding their decision. Xiaoyong stood with a confident, smug expression, casually responding with a no. Zhang Qi stood over his friend, Brother Chong. Zhang Qi gripped the knife tightly, his expression filled with determination, while Brother Chong, screaming as the situation escalated. Filled with rage, Zhang Qi raised the knife high above his head, ready to strike. His expression was fierce and determined, teeth clenched. Brother Chong screamed, but the knife stopped suddenly just inches away from him. Zhang Qi, with the knife, was restrained by Xiaoyong, preventing the attack. Xiaoyong, intervening, remained calm and composed, firmly holding his wrist to stop the violent act. Zhang Qi nervously addressed Brother Xiaoyong, likely seeking his attention, while Xiaoyong appeared calm and observant, displaying a stark contrast in their reactions to the situation at hand. Xiaoyong dismissed the others, indicating that he still had plans for someone whose situation he deemed unique. His command reflected authority and control. A system prompt alerted that a rare variant had been discovered. A sudden bang echoed through the hallway as the doors to the medical room slammed shut. In a tense confrontation, Xiaoyong stood over an enraged individual strapped to a bed, who growled in defiance. The man gritted his teeth as Xiaoyong calmly addressed him by name, calling him Qin Chong. Xiaoyong leaned in closely, asserting his authority over the restrained Qin Chong as he assigned him an important task, emphasizing the gravity of the situation. Chen Chang's pained expression reflected his inner turmoil. A sleek black car screeched as it made a sharp turn on a rooftop, indicating a high-speed chase or a critical escape maneuver. The black car crashed into a pole with a loud impact, causing visible damage and abrupt skid marks on the road. Shengzhe emerged from the damaged car, frustrated and rubbing his head, cursing his misfortune after the crash. His exasperated expression and the smoke billowing from the vehicle indicated the severity of the situation. As the zombie gazed into the distance, he reassures himself that help or something crucial is on the way, easing his earlier frustration. The man finds himself in a sudden confrontation with a zombie that roars ferociously, lunging at him with unrestrained aggression. In the heat of the clash, the man struggles to fend off the creature's relentless assault, managing to push it away just in time, sending it crashing to the ground. The man sprints toward his vehicle with a zombie in pursuit, determined to reach a weapon or tool inside. He grabs a metal rod from the car, his urgency and desperation clear as he prepares to defend himself. In a fierce act of retaliation, he swings the rod with full force, striking the creature brutally and venting his anger. In a violent clash, the man stands over the fallen zombie amidst the debris, panting heavily after the fierce battle, the wrecked car smoking behind him, with exhaustion evident on his face. He grips the rod tightly, receiving a warning from an onlooker to leave quickly, prompting him to hastily retreat from the scene. A vehicle pulls up near a building as a group of individuals prepares for their next move. Xiaoyong steps through a squeaky door onto the rooftop, signaling the beginning of a planned operation. He is accompanied by a determined team, each armed and ready, reflecting their resolve and unity in facing the challenges ahead. Shanshan expresses her discomfort with the gear, addressing Xiaoyong and questioning the necessity of their protective equipment. Xiaoyong, maintaining his composed demeanor, stresses the dangers posed by zombies, explaining that their unpredictable strength makes the gear essential, especially for those with less combat experience. As the group huddles together behind a building, strategizing their next move, Xiaoyong leads them with caution and determination, emphasizing their need to stay alert. Xiaoyong signals his team to prepare, warning them that they are now within the perception range of the zombies and that readiness is crucial. As a zombie detects their presence, its vicious appearance and ferocious movements signal an imminent attack. Xiaoyong shouts reminders to his team, urging them to maintain distance and watch out for one another as they brace for a fierce confrontation against the relentless zombie threat. A zombie pounces aggressively toward Xiaoyong, but he narrowly evades the attack, keeping his focus sharp. Xiaoyong quickly instructs his team, emphasizing that the moment a zombie misses is their best opportunity to strike, targeting the temple and the back of the neck for maximum effectiveness. One of the team members, driven by Xiaoyong's guidance, steps up with determination, ready to deliver a decisive blow. As he shouts his attack command, a powerful blow lands on the zombie's head, sending shockwaves of impact but causing the creature to react violently. Glasses yells in pain, realizing that striking the hardest part of the skull was a mistake, as Xiaoyong critiques from a distance, highlighting the error as a lesson for the group. As the zombie roars back, it aggressively counters, grabbing and pushing Glasses, demonstrating the peril of misjudging these relentless foes. In a desperate cry for help, he calls out for Zhang Qi as the zombie closes in with menacing intent. Xiaoyong acknowledges the correct defensive move, urging Zhang Qi to step in as teammates rally to assist with precise timing. Zhang Qi swings a bat, delivering a powerful strike to the zombie, turning the tide of the battle in their favor. The zombie takes a powerful hit to the head from the bat, staggering but still standing, showcasing its resilience. Xiaoyong, watching the group's effort, urges them to keep attacking, emphasizing that one hit won't be enough to take the zombie down completely. One of the team members, filled with adrenaline, turns to Xiaoyong with a proud yet anxious expression, asking how they performed. Xiaoyong smirks confidently, unfazed by the approaching zombie as he casually dismisses the danger with a nonchalant attitude. Zhang Qi urgently shouts a warning for Xiaoyong to be careful, clearly alarmed by the zombie's rapid advance. The zombie lunges with a fierce snarl, closing in dangerously close, its gaping maw aimed directly at Xiaoyong. He grabs the zombie by the head with a firm grip, halting its attack effortlessly and displaying his superior strength and composure. He admonishes the zombie as if it were capable of understanding, reminding it of the crucial lesson to always be aware of one's surroundings. Turning the tables with a sharp command, the rest of the team looks on in stunned silence, clearly impressed and taken aback by Xiaoyong's commanding control over the situation. Shengzhe approaches, scanning his surroundings with a cautious expression as he notices vagrants roaming nearby. Frustrated by the unexpected presence, he questions whether Xiaoyong would have alerted them or confessed something important. Meanwhile, a rugged vehicle pulls up with urgency, and a commanding voice resonates, urging everyone to stay vigilant and support their comrades, signaling a rallying call to action. Xiaoyong arrives at the vehicle. A voice confirms that it's Xiaoyong, causing a stir among the scattered group below. Shengzhe peers out from the back of the vehicle, astonished to learn that Xiaoyong and his gang are actively hunting down zombies. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure with glowing eyes emerges from beneath the vehicle. Infected Zayoa crawls desperately on the ground, reaching out with determination despite the severe injuries. The hand grasps tightly onto the leg of Shengzhe, startling him and causing a sudden reaction. The man stumbles backward in shock, yelling out in surprise as he falls, the grip of the injured person still firm, intensity of their plea for help or escape. His face contorts in a mix of fear and shock as he realizes the threat before him, his expression filled with dread. Suddenly, Zayoa rises with a roar, her eyes wide and furious as she lunges toward him, embodying the terrifying transformation that catches him completely off guard. Shengzhe is brutally attacked, his face contorted in pain as he screams out in horror. Blood spurts from Zayoa's body as the force of the strike overwhelms him, leaving him helpless and panicked, unable to defend himself against the onslaught. Xiaoyong, holding a smoking gun, stands over a lifeless body while Shengzhe, drenched in blood, struggles to catch his breath. Desperation fills his face as he looks at the carnage around him. Xiaoyong holds his rifle firmly, his expression serious as he confronts the situation before him. Shengzhe stumbles toward him, overwhelmed with relief, calling out to his older brother, grateful to have finally found him alive amidst the chaos. Xiaoyong's eyes widen as he notices something unusual, his attention drawn to the blood-stained arm of the man before him. The infected wound becomes more visible. Xiaoyong coldly informs Shengzhe that he has been bitten, raising his weapon to confront him. Shengzhe begs for mercy, pleading with Xiaoyong not to shoot as he tries to reason with him, but Xiaoyong remains firm, warning him not to come any closer. Shengzhe is filled with despair and admits that he knows he's beyond saving and will soon turn into one of the crazed infected. However, with tears of anger and desperation, he reveals that young Tao has taken his family hostage, using them as leverage to manipulate him in a plot to steal Xiaoyong's resources. With determination, the man pleads his innocence, insisting his family never committed any heinous acts and that his family is blameless. He begs Xiaoyong to protect them from the cruel fate that awaits, leveraging the loyalty they've built and the resources he's accumulated as his final desperate attempt for mercy. Xiaoyong reflects silently, acknowledging that while Shengzhe's initial motives may have been selfish, there's no denying that his actions had helped Xiaoyong to stockpile a large amount of resources. With a determined expression, he contemplates his next move, fully aware of the weight of the situation before him. His group of survivors, led by a determined Xiaoyong, gathers with weapons in hand, ready to take on the next challenge. Xiaoyong smirks, realizing that the added incentive of rewards for completing tasks has only strengthened his resolve to move forward. Xiaoyong smiles confidently as he reviews the newly assigned tasks from the system, his determination growing with the promise of rewards. His mission is clear: to rescue Shengzhe's wife and eliminate any infected lurking outside the base, with every success adding to his reward points. Xiaoyong reassures Shengzhe that he will handle matters concerning his family. In an emotional display, he falls to the ground, declaring his undying loyalty, swearing to repay his debt even if it means serving in another life. The man kneels before Xiaoyong, urging him to take action, his desperation evident. He hesitates, but Shengzhe pleads for him to end it, not wanting to become a threat to anyone in the future. Xiaoyong, holding a gun and deep in thought, remains silent as he weighs his decision. Shanshan was standing nearby, so he ordered her to fetch a bicycle for him. Then Xiaoyong instructs Shengzhe to leave and go somewhere far from the crowds, as time is running out. Shengzhe, realizing the gravity of the situation, expresses his gratitude with a smile, thanking Xiaoyong for his final act of kindness. He speeds away on a bicycle, racing against time as the desolate streets blur behind him. With fierce determination, he calls out for his wife and child, pushing himself to the limit in his final act of desperation. Shengzhe, overwhelmed with emotion and tears, presses forward despite the pain and fear, as his eyes glow with determination. Meanwhile, Xiaoyong stands in front of a group of defeated enemies, his rifle slung over his back, commanding respect and authority from those around him. A petrol bomb smashes down with tremendous force, taking out another enemy in a brutal display. At the same time, a lighter ignites. A massive fire erupts as the group of survivors stands in silence, watching the destruction unfold before them. The leader coolly evaluates their progress, reminding them that with their current skills and teamwork, future challenges should be manageable. Shanshan, with sharp eyes and determination, expresses her concern about facing larger hordes, noting that their current abilities might not be enough. The group listens in silence, with the weight of her words causing them to reflect on the looming dangers ahead. Xiaoyong, resolute, commands the group to follow him as he strides ahead with purpose. The group approaches a large, imposing door, preparing for whatever awaits them on the other side. Xiaoyong acknowledges Old Man Shenhua and informs him about the warehouse, handing over the key. He entrusts the safety of their weapons to Shenhua, knowing he'll protect the armory while the leader heads into the city for a mission. Old Man Shenhua expresses concern about the chaos in the city, questioning whether it's wise for Xiaoyong to venture out alone. However, Zhang Qi enthusiastically volunteers to accompany him, rallying the others to join the mission. Xiaoyong insists that they stay behind, as they are not yet ready to face the dangers ahead, entrusting Shenhua with the responsibility of their safety. As he drives off, determined and focused, his weapons rest beside him, ready for the challenges awaiting him in the city. The system display shows empty options, frustrating the young leader as he notices that the marketplace hasn't been updated with anything useful. Annoyed, he contemplates spending points to refresh the system, hoping for better supplies for the mission ahead. Xiaoyong presses the refresh button. After spending his points, the system reveals several supply crates that might give him the edge he needs to succeed. He notices that the cost of manual refresh has increased, making him realize he'll need to be more cautious with his points. Satisfied with the rare item he obtained from the refresh, he contemplates the value of his decision as he prepares for the challenges ahead. The system confirms the successful exchange of points for the black tech supply crate, reducing his score significantly. Xiaoyong speeds off in his car. The streets are quiet, but the tension lingers in the air as he drives toward his destination. The black tech crate reveals a powerful energy-enhancing serum, boosting the user's physical strength. With a smirk, he consumes the serum, feeling its effects immediately as a bright surge of power courses through his body. Xiaoyong is surprised by the strength of the +5 energy serum, realizing its significant impact. The system displays his new stats, showing his attributes boosted to an extraordinary level far beyond that of an ordinary person. The scene shifts to a tall residential building identified as the home of Shengzhe. Xiaoli comforts her scared child, reassuring him that his father will handle everything and keep them safe. Meanwhile, two menacing figures burst into the room, their serious expressions signaling trouble as they confront the family. Xiaoli, alarmed, demands to know what the intruders plan to do. One of the men grabs her, mocking her fear and implying that they're there to cause serious harm. Xiaoli struggles against the intruders, pleading for them to stop as they begin to assault her, terror filling her face. Despite her resistance, the men continue their attack, leaving her defenseless. Xiao Li is forcefully grabbed by two men, her cries for help ringing out as she struggles to break free. Behind, her son watches in fear, unable to intervene in the escalating confrontation. A figure steps into the room, his expression stern as he questions the chaos unfolding before him. His calm but commanding presence immediately shifts the atmosphere, as if he holds control over the situation. Brother Li, with a stern expression, is approached by an accomplice who calls him over with a sly grin, seemingly unfazed by the situation. Despite the apparent lightheartedness, there's an underlying tension as they exchange words about how to handle the woman. The man smirks, his expression chilling confidence as he dismisses the situation, hinting that this isn't the first time he's dealt with such matters. Brother Li expresses frustration, warning his accomplice about the potential consequences if things go wrong with the woman. He asserts his authority, making it clear that they need to handle the situation carefully if they want to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Young Tao grins with a confident smirk, taunting his targets as if he's toying with them, showing no fear of the situation. Meanwhile, as the door closed, Xiao Li clutches her son tightly, both trembling in fear as they brace for whatever danger might come next. Under the eerie glow of the crescent moon, chaos unfolds in the city streets as shadowy figures scramble in panic, surrounded by wrecked vehicles. Xiao Yong calmly grips the steering wheel, his enhanced abilities sharpening his focus and reaction time. With double the physical capacity of an average person, he's fully in control, prepared for whatever lies ahead on the road. Xiaoyong speeds through a crowded highway, effortlessly dodging cars as flames trail behind, leaving chaos in his wake. Moments later, under the ominous night sky, the city is in disarray with zombies scattered across the road. Unsure of what just tore through the streets, he steps out of the car as its headlights illuminate the deserted road ahead. He realizes it's time to leave the car behind and continue the mission on foot, his gaze sharp and determined. Under the moonlight, Xiaoyong senses something off, his eyes narrowing as he scans the darkened forest around him. Suddenly, a zombie charges at him, screaming wildly with terrifying speed, catching him off guard. Xiaoyong swiftly dodges the attacker's strike, countering with a precise and forceful movement. His fist connects solidly with the opponent, showing his superior strength and skill in a swift, decisive blow. With explosive speed, Xiaoyong delivers a powerful blow to his opponent, catching them off guard and sending them flying back. The force of the attack leaves the enemy reeling as the protagonist prepares to strike again, showing no signs of slowing down. Xiaoyong calmly extends his hand, digital energy materializing into a weapon, its sharp edge glowing with power. As the enemies approach, he stands unfazed, gripping the newly formed sword, ready to face them head-on. Xiaoyong dashes forward with lightning speed, his eyes locked on his target as he closes the distance in an instant. With a swift and powerful strike, his blade clashes in the darkness, leaving his enemies defeated under the moonlit sky, marking the end of the confrontation. Xiaoyong stands over his fallen foe, reflecting on his superior strength and reflexes, knowing that his enhanced physical abilities have given him the edge. Sensing danger, his heightened awareness kicks in, alerting him to a new threat surrounding them as a tense realization spreads. Xiaoyong gazes into the distance, calculating the distance ahead as the city looms under the night sky, determined to continue his path. Suddenly, a system notification appears, alerting him to an unexpected mission that has been triggered. Some people find themselves surrounded, panic setting in as they desperately try to defend against the incoming threat. Inside the store, quick orders are given to barricade the entrances, with others scrambling to bring heavy objects to fortify their defenses. A young boy, desperate and terrified, cries out to his father, fearing that they won't make it out alive. His father, trying to maintain his composure, reassures him with bravado, but the tension in his voice reveals the fear they both share. As tears stream down the boy's face, the tension rises as one man sarcastically complains about the chaos. The officer gripping his gun nervously wonders if this could be the end for them. With sweat beading down his face, he contemplates the gravity of their situation, realizing just how dire things have become. The silhouette of figures outside the window hints at the looming danger as the noise of breaking glass fills the room. Instinctively, the group reacts, readying themselves for the incoming threat. As one of them nervously questions the sudden commotion, the glass shatters violently as a figure crashes through the window, debris flying everywhere in a chaotic explosion of force. Panic sets in as one man screams in shock, while another stands frozen, horrified by the sudden intrusion. Blood splatters against the walls as the figure collapses, leaving a dark and unsettling scene in its wake. The room falls eerily silent, with the shattered window and blood stains serving as grim reminders of the chaos that just unfolded. The officer, sweating and breathing heavily, gives orders to move heavy objects to reinforce their position, clearly feeling the pressure of the situation as the group quietly complies. Tension builds, and they brace for whatever is coming, trying to avoid making any noise that could give them away. Outside, shadowy figures gather around the fallen bodies, the eerie silence only broken by the faint sound of their movements. Inside, the group, tense and ready for a fight, stares in disbelief at the horrific scene, questioning who could have caused such devastation. One of them shouts in panic, convinced that they are dealing with a mutant, his fear clearly escalating. Confused, Old Song asks what a mutant is. His son explains that it's an enhanced version of a zombie, stronger and more agile, just like in comics, novels, and games. Old Song, frustrated, criticizes the younger man for always indulging in comics, novels, and games, blaming them for his son's poor performance in exam. The policeman, exasperated by the comment, calls out his lack of tact and urges him to focus on carefully observing their surroundings to avoid being caught off guard by the mutant. The group cautiously moves forward, each person scanning their surroundings as they slowly gather at a designated point. Suddenly, one of the officers signals for everyone to stop, bringing the group to a halt as tension fills the air. Xiao Yong receives a system notification confirming that his mission is complete, with additional points earned for his actions. Meanwhile, a frantic voice exclaims that the entity they encountered must have been a mutant, filled with fear and disbelief. One man observes Xiao Yong from a distance, commenting that he appears to be a survivor. Xiao Yong, with a smirk, dismisses the notion of mutants, confidently stating that it's not yet time for them to overrun the streets. The officer exclaims, affirming that Xiao Yong is indeed a survivor. The officer, urging him to join their group, warns that it's far too dangerous to be wandering around alone in such uncertain times. Xiao Yong questions the group's numbers, curious if they are the only ones left. The officer explains that they are out searching for supplies and that a large number of civilians have gathered at a place called Rongxiang Garden, which isn't far from their current location. The officer, confident in his group's abilities, invites the protagonist to join them, assuring him that with their numbers and experience, they can protect him from the dangers ahead. Xiao Yong smiles warmly, thanking them for the offer, though his expression hints at something deeper. 3 people stand in the middle of a street at night, surrounded by a faint glow. Their serious expressions suggest they are preparing for something important or dangerous. Old Song asks Xiao Yong about an important meeting. Xiao Yong responds simply with, yes. The man with a stern expression turns back, asking if Xiao Yong they're talking about is a relative or a girlfriend, implying that their relationship with the missing person might be important. Old Song confronts Xiao Yong, reminding him that this is the apocalypse and whoever he's looking for is probably already dead. He tells him to prepare himself mentally for that reality. Officer angrily explains that even if someone isn't killed by the crazed attackers, they could still run into a dangerous crowd of survivors. His frustration and concern are evident as he warns about the different threats in their world. Xiao Yong looks surprised and repeats the phrase, dangerous crowd of survivors. He's either confused or concerned. Officer explains, with a serious expression, that a brutal group in the eastern part of the region will do anything to survive, even attacking other survivors without hesitation. He recalls that they encountered this group once before, losing companions to their violent actions. He smirks and warns that whenever you come across other survivors, you should always stay alert and cautious, no matter what. The boy yells in shock, warning, "Uncle, watch out," as he sees something dangerous approaching the older man. The man engages in a struggle with a zombie, both of them fighting over a gun. As Officer tries to defend himself from the attack, he fires the gun at the zombie, neutralizing the threat. In the midst of the struggle, he stands over the defeated zombie, breathing heavily and curses out loud in frustration, relieved that the danger has passed. A group of zombies turns their attention toward the officer, drawn by the sound of the gunfire. Their aggressive expressions show they are ready to attack. He realizes the danger and tries to stay calm, gripping his gun tightly while quickly assessing his next move. As more enemies approach, Uncle Lee spots something in the distance and shouts, "I've got it," as he notices a bus that could be their means of escape. The group runs toward the bus with urgency as Officer yells for everyone to get inside quickly to avoid the approaching danger. Xiaoyong reflects on their decision, noting that while running might attract more zombies, the bus is an ideal place to defend themselves. He also realizes that once they're inside, there will be no turning back. Assessing the situation, he gives the officer a score of 70 for his quick judgment in this crisis. The man urgently calls out to Xiaoyong, telling him to hurry up as he runs toward the bus while a zombie chases him closely. Xiaoyong barely makes it onto the bus, jumping inside just as officer helps pull him in. He quickly closes the bus doors and warns Xiaoyong to carefully check every seat to make sure no zombies are hiding inside. The boy responds, panicking as he notices that the zombies haven't given up and are still outside, crowding near the bus. Uncle Lee, frustrated and in panic, yells, "Damn! Were we too slow?" as zombies start banging on the bus window, trying to break in. A group of zombie hands reaches for the bus, aggressively pounding on the side as they try to get inside. The zombies crowd around the bus, desperately reaching out as one of them mumbles something ominous, indicating their relentless desire to attack. Uncle Lee struggles to keep the door closed as a zombie tries to force its way in, shouting that he's losing control of the situation. He looks surprised as Xiaoyong places his hand on his shoulder, signaling something urgent, while a zombie continues to try and break in from behind. Xiaoyong pushes Uncle Lee back with sudden force, surprising him as he reacts quickly to the dangerous situation. Uncle Lee, startled by Xiaoyong's strength and decisive action, questions just how strong Xiaoyong is in disbelief. Xiaoyong calmly tells the man that he can no longer hold the door closed. He suggests they rally the team and break the windows to counterattack the incoming threat. Uncle Lee coughs and gathers his strength while Xiaoyong stands ready as both prepare to fight back against the incoming zombies. The zombies start breaking through the windows of the bus, shattering the glass as they move closer to attacking the group inside. A crowd of zombies reaches for the bus, trying to climb inside through the broken windows. One of the zombies screams as it makes its way toward the bus. Uncle Lee fiercely attacks a zombie, yelling, "Die!" as he drives his weapon forward in a life-or-death struggle. A couple of survivors help pull someone inside the bus as the man keeps his gun ready, protecting the group. He checks his gun, realizing they are running low on bullets, and worries that they don't have enough ammo to deal with the large number of zombies. Uncle Lee is startled when someone hands him an unexpected item, saying, "Use this," while he looks on confused and unsure of what it is. Xiaoyong, now armed with a crossbow, looks surprised and questions, "Where did this come from?" as he prepares for the next action. Xiaoyong responds that he grabbed it without thinking during the chaos, now holding the crossbow firmly, ready to use it. Outside, the zombies scream as they continue their relentless assault on the bus, determined to break through. The survivors on the bus begin shooting down the zombies from above, yelling insults as they fend off the horde. The survivors stand in front of the bus after successfully fending off the zombie horde, surrounded by fallen bodies. As they regroup, one of the younger survivors holds his weapon and exclaims that surviving 2 dangerous situations in a row is no coincidence, claiming they must be the chosen ones of this apocalypse. Xiaoyong calmly advises him to remain cautious and avoid becoming overconfident in these dire circumstances. Under the crescent moon, someone expresses hope that everything is going smoothly on the other side. The group is walking down a hallway. Coward Yiming volunteers to take the night shift, showing his readiness to help. Glasses looks surprised and asks why Yiming is suddenly being so enthusiastic and proactive today. Yiming, clearly annoyed, snaps back, insisting that he's always been this way and tells Glasses to mind his own business. Glasses, now confused and a bit nervous, wonders why Yiming is overreacting so much to his question. Old Man Shinbu instructs the group to rest, telling Yiming to be cautious and wake everyone up if there's any trouble during his watch. Yiming assures him confidently, "Don't worry." Yiming sits outside at night, gazing up at the moon and remarks that it's already late and everyone must be asleep by now. He stands on a balcony, deep in thought, mentioning that things could get worse and he need to resolve the situation before Xiaoyong returns. The older man is shown peacefully asleep, unaware of what's happening, with the store locker key resting on the pillow beside him. Yiming stands in the doorway, watching intently with a serious and focused expression. The old man doesn't even notice when Lu Yiming quietly opens the door to enter. As Lu Yiming approaches the old man's bed, he reaches out to grab the key, but to his surprise, the old man proves to be more alert than expected, waking up just before Lu Yiming can grab it. The old man asks what the hell he is doing, but before he can get any more words out, he receives a solid punch to the face from Yiming. With the key now in hand, Lu Yiming runs as fast as he can while the old man calls after him, demanding the key back. The commotion wakes others up, and the old man quickly reports to everyone that Lu Yiming has taken the key to the weapons room. They all run as fast as they can to catch that bastard, but the idiot throws a bunch of stuff in the way while running. Everyone chasing him stops right there. It's pretty hilarious, though, because they could easily jump over these obstacles, but they just stand there like game characters refusing to enter a restricted area. Lu Yiming notices the nursery room on his way and figures he might as well go all the way since he's already doing this. He heads into the room where Chin Chong, the zombie, is lying on the bed, strapped down. As he tries to approach, the zombie suddenly retaliates with its free hand. Lu Yiming is taken aback because the second hand was supposed to be tied down, and he wonders if they made the straps too loose when they bound this freak. This actually makes him even happier, though, because it saves him the trouble of untying the zombie. Meanwhile, the others finally make it past the obstacles, and what they find in the corridor is far from pleasant. They're frustrated that Lu Yiming went out of his way just to let Chen Chong out of the infirmary. The old man is regretting not realizing sooner that Yiming was such a snake, but Shanshan tells him there's no point in regretting now. They need to focus on what to do next. Since all their weapons are locked in the warehouse, they should start by making sure that this zombie gets locked back in the infirmary. Old man Shinbu decides to use the method Xiaoyong taught them earlier. Stay careful and avoid letting the monster bite. With that in mind, they start walking toward the zombie. Zhang Qi quickly grabs the bastard by the neck while the other two help hold its hands down. The old man contributes the most, pointing towards the infirmary and telling them to drag the zombie back. With a countdown of 3, they push the zombie back into the infirmary and lock the door as securely as they can. Once the zombie is locked inside, one of them wonders if it's just him or if restraining the zombie wasn't as hard as expected. Everyone else shares the same thought, but the old man reminds them that they've wasted so much time here that the little brat must have gotten all the weapons by now, right? Right at that moment, Yiming shows up and questions the old man's audacity to call him a little brat. Sadly for everyone, the bastard finally has a gun in his hands. However, he seems annoyed by the fact that the storeroom only had one weapon, but he figures this one will be enough to deal with all of them. After he takes care of everyone, he'll take his sweet time searching for the other weapons. Yiming points his gun at them, ordering them to move back into the room. Zhang Qi tries to reason with the bastard, reminding him that it was Xiaoyong who saved everyone and gave them a chance to live. But Lu Yiming reminds them that their boy always acts high and mighty. Saving their lives doesn't mean they have to serve him like slaves for the rest of their days. The old man also calls this bastard an ungrateful sucker. Meanwhile, inside the infirmary, Chen Chong seems to have his own plans, and it looks like he's about to intervene in the heated argument. But before anything can happen, the scene transitions to Rongxiang Garden, where Officer Li is giving precise directions to their boy, telling him how to reach Jinhu Mansion. He warns that the layout of the residential area is complicated, making it easy for zombies to hide, so he needs to be extra careful. Officer Li tells Xiaoyong that once he finds the people he's looking for, he should return to Rongxiang Garden to meet everyone. He advises Xiaoyong to take the side gate of the community, not the main gate, for safety. Xiaoyong thanks him and says he'll keep that in mind as he begins walking toward his next destination. Old man suggests helping him out since he helped them fend off those zombies and save their lives, but Officer Li reminds him that they have no idea what the situation is like inside Jinhu Mansion. If they accidentally walk into a horde of zombies, everyone will be dead in no time. Another man asks why they're letting Jiang walk into what seems like certain death. Officer Li replies that he's already warned Xiaoyong as much as he could, so all he can do now is feel pity for him. He adds, though, that they shouldn't overlook the skills Xiaoyong has. He's clearly capable. Meanwhile, outside, the area is crawling with zombies, and inside, the goons who are taking Li Shuxiong's family hostage are getting annoyed to see that Li Shuxiong hasn't come back. The other thug doesn't care and says he's held his frustration in long enough, so tonight he's letting it all out on his wife, otherwise, he won't be able to sleep. It seems like these idiots are just waiting for a dead man to return. One of them, though, seems smart enough to realize that Li Shuxiong might be dead since he went out alone. The other disgusting thug adds that when they clap her, they'll make sure to tie her up so she won't have a chance to kill herself. They have no idea when things might go south, so they decide to make the most of the time they have left. Meanwhile, the lady trembles, hearing the goons plotting against her. Ponytail finally gives his friends the green light to go, but he tells them to be careful and not let anything happen to the woman, especially not while doing anything naughty. Suddenly, Ponytail notices something unusual outside. As we peek outside, we see that all the zombies have mysteriously dropped dead. While this reason may be unknown to that bastard, we know exactly what's going on. Ponytail decides to take a look outside, wondering if it could be a rescue team. But before he can go any further, his life's chapter ends right there. As he steps outside, he's met with a dagger slash that cuts his throat clean off, and his head rolls over the ground. Meanwhile, the other thugs in the room are ready to claim their prize. They look absolutely thrilled and aroused as they start undoing their belts. They yank her son away from her and slap her hard across the face for yelling. They throw the kid aside, but the little brat has some courage and is willing to fight with everything he's got. However, they kick him out, not wanting any more trouble, and slam the door shut behind him, leaving the poor kid outside. At that moment, the headless body of Ponytail collapses to the ground, leaving the kid frozen in shock. But what stuns him even more is the silhouette standing over the doorway. There is nothing to fear about because it's Xiaoyong. He looks at the kid and asks if Li Shuxiong is his father. The boy stutters for a moment before managing to respond. Meanwhile, inside the room, the thugs have already started tearing the woman's clothes as she struggles to cover herself up. One of them, cocky and smug, slaps her hard across the face, demanding her to scream out loud as they harass her. But the woman stays silent, as she does not want her son to hear her suffer. Eventually, the thug just decides to go over her and let his other buddies have their turns. But before he could do anything, the door slams open. One of the thugs thinks it must be the brat who kicked the door open, but before he can react, his head is cleanly sliced off, and he goes silent instantly. His friend, clueless about what just happened, asks why he's standing there like a fool and tells him to just kick the brat out. What his friend doesn't know is that the guy has already lost his head and promptly collapses to the ground. The others are completely confused, not understanding what's going on. At that moment, Xiaoyong grabs one of them and slams him hard against the wall. He delivers a solid kick to the thug's face, knocking him out cold and finishing him for good. The scene transitions back to the fort, where Yiming is holding his gun against everyone. He tells them one last time to move, or he will shoot. The old man tells the others to just do as this bastard says and move to the room. However, Shanshan decides against this idea. The old man, though, insists she follow his orders since Yiming has the gun, but reassures her that he'll think of something later. Yiming just smirks disgustingly and reminds them that there's nothing to figure out. He threatens them, saying they haven't seen his ruthlessness and decisiveness yet and that he will definitely establish his dominance. He decides to take the old man down first since he's the one yapping the most. The other two, standing behind the old man, try to talk him out of it. But just as they're speaking, they hear a sound. Suddenly, the lock on the infirmary door begins to move, and with a loud swing, the door opens. To everyone's shock, it's Chin Chong, who had somehow used the key to free himself. They find it ridiculous that Chin Chong managed to unlock the door himself in his berserk state. It's clear that Chin Chong has a bone to pick with Yiming, and he locks his deadly glare onto the bastard. Yiming quickly points his gun, determined not to let a monster who can open gates at will live. He pulls the trigger, but to his despair, the gun jams, and he realizes he's about to get screwed. Before he can react, the monster lunges at him, tearing him apart and killing the bastard who's kept everyone on edge for the past few chapters. Not only does Chin Chong take out Yiming, but he also drags his lifeless body toward the infirmary. No one knows what's happening, and all they can do is watch in complete disbelief. Chen Chong, on the other hand, grabs the key to the infirmary door, tosses it aside, and locks himself in, leaving everyone standing there bewildered. Meanwhile, Xiaoyong is done taking down the thugs and finally frees the wife. He then calls the kid over to him, but the protective mother holds her son close, asking Xiaoyong what he plans to do with him. Xiaoyong doesn't bother explaining and simply tells the kid to come over. The kid finally decides to trust him, assuring his mother it'll be all right. When he reaches Xiaoyong, he hands him a dagger and tells him to kill these bastards. The thugs quickly realize what's coming for them next, so they start begging for their lives. Even the mother tries to protest, saying he's just a child. But Xiaoyong states that he's no longer just a kid and that everything changes from this moment. He tells the kid that from now on, he's the one responsible for protecting his mother, so he needs to gather his courage and eliminate the monsters who hurt her. The disgusting smirks of those thugs flash in the boy's mind. Fueled by all his anger and courage, he charges at the bastards, and in the end, he takes them down, finally avenging his mother's suffering. The mother looks horrified as she watches her son, while the kid himself is consumed with anger. He knows that even after killing these bastards, his father isn't coming back. In a moment of grief and frustration, he asks Xiaoyong if his father is pushing up daisies now. Sadly, Xiaoyong responds with a somber yes. The boy, unable to handle the weight of it all, throws the bloodied knife to the ground. He rushes toward his mother and hugs her as tightly as he can, seeking comfort in her embrace. The mother, desperate to keep her son safe, pleads with Xiaoyong to take him with him, offering to do anything he wants in exchange for her son's safety. But the boy, determined to stay by her side, says he wants to protect her. Xiaoyong invites both of them to come with him. He reveals that he had promised Li Shuxiong that he would keep them safe. With that assurance, the mother and son follow Xiaoyong closely, walking past the dead bodies of the defeated thugs. The kid looks scared to see those bodies, and he is even more scared about the monster who killed these guys. Xiaoyong, with his usual calm, replies that it was he who took down all of them. Suddenly, Xiaoyong gestures for them to stop, sensing some suspicious sounds nearby. He turns to Hannah and asks if she knows where Building 8 in Banyan Garden is. The mother responds by reminding him that it's the same direction he is currently facing and asks him why he's asking about it. The scene then shifts to Building 8, where a group of looters stands outside, demanding supplies from everyone inside. They assure the residents that they will spare them if they surrender their resources. Inside, our team is hiding in the apartments, debating whether they should give in. Officer Lee quickly shoots down the idea, saying that the looters are animals who won't keep their word and will kill everyone except the women. The thugs outside continue shouting, giving everyone just 10 minutes to cooperate or risk being killed. Inside, one of the women thinks about going outside to beg the looters to spare them, but another protests, refusing to become a plaything for those animals. Lee silences both of them, telling them not to worry. He assures them they aren't planning to surrender and tells them to guard the hallway, confident that the looters won't be able to get past them. Meanwhile, the gang leader of the looters outside smirks to himself, thinking about how well-armed they are. His lackey, however, knows their strength isn't enough to force their way in, as the leader of the survivors inside is armed. Not to mention, they are hiding, making it even harder to force their way inside. But the leader just smiles as he says they don't need to force their way through. Instead, he orders his men to cut off the water supply to the first-floor apartments and waits to see how long they'll hold out. While these thugs plot their tactics, Xiaoyong stands nearby, watching them sneakily. Shu Shu innocently asks if these are bad people, to which Xiaoyong responds positively. It's both humorous and ironic that Shu Shu is asking such an innocent question, especially considering he's the one who just killed 3 grown men with a dagger. Xiaoyong then reminds Shu Shu that these are the same kinds of people who bullied his mother, and that's why they need to be dealt with. Meanwhile, Officer Lee tells everyone to guard the stairs and stay hidden as he plans to check out what these guys downstairs are up to. Officer Lee then walks over to the window and sneaks a peek outside, noticing that all 7 of them are armed, with 3 of them packing guns. But then, a loud bang echoes through the air, catching Officer Lee off guard. The rest of the group is just as confused, not knowing what's going on. These guys are getting ripped apart by bullets from Xiaoyong. When one of their men goes down, the others are left clueless about who just took them out. That's when Officer Lee spots Xiaoyong, gun in hand, making his way forward. He starts opening fire, and one of the goons takes a direct headshot. When they spot him standing in the middle of their ring, they start shooting back with their pistols, but Xiaoyong just keeps walking forward, unfazed, as not a single bullet even comes close to grazing him. This only makes him smirk at the sight of these amateurs. He raises his gun, aiming at the boss of the lackey hiding behind the concrete block, but his bullets hit the block instead. The frustrated boss shouts at his lackey, telling them to start firing while Xiaoyong is busy shooting at him. The lackey eventually stands up straight, fully determined to take Xiaoyong down himself, but Xiaoyong quickly shifts his aim, pointing the barrel of his gun directly at the guy. With 1 or 2 bullets, he blows the bastard's head off. The leader of the squad sneers from behind the concrete block, feeling smug as he thinks Xiaoyong must be out of bullets by now. Confident, he decides to make his move, aiming his gun at Xiaoyong. But Xiaoyong meets his gaze with a cold, unwavering stare, standing tall right in front of the guy. As soon as the thug pulls the trigger, Xiaoyong moves his head with lightning speed, avoiding the shot. He grabs the thug's arm, the one holding the gun, and, in a fluid motion, aims the same gun right under the bastard's neck. Without hesitation, Xiaoyong pulls the trigger, sending a bullet through the guy's head. Just like that, the entire squad of criminals has been taken care of. Xiaoyong then rummages through the leader's dead body, searching for anything useful. After that, he makes his way into the building, only to find that there are still some goons left from the squad. The remaining thugs launch themselves at him, desperate to take him down, but Xiaoyong doesn't even flinch. He stays rooted in place, unfazed, and all that breaks the silence are 3 quick gunshots, each perfectly placed, dropping the thugs on the spot. Watching all of this, Shu Shu is over the moon with excitement, clearly impressed with how Xiaoyong handled the fight. He can't help but admire him even more. Right then, a system task appears in front of Xiaoyong, revealing his next objective, to recruit survivors from Rangxiang. Completing this task promises a reward. Xiaoyong asks about these people, and Officer Li responds, explaining that they're from the Bichue villas, located to the south of the city. Officer Li then quickly calls over the 2 yellow-jacketed men, Lu Chao and Chegni, telling them to brief Brother Yang about Bichue since they ran over from the south. The 2 yellow-jacketed guys reveal that the people there are a gang, armed, well-resourced, and holed up in Bichue villas, taking in nearly all the survivors from the south. This makes Xiaoyong pause, thinking back to his previous life. He wonders if Bichue could be where Li Shushan and Qi Xiaoyong's settlements were and whether it could be them who took over. He asks the yellow-coated guys if they're implying that Bichue is the only settlement left in the south now. The yellow-coated man replies that it wasn't always the case, but the gang had weapons, and the smaller settlements couldn't defend themselves. As they took over each place, they killed half the population and then abducted the young and pretty women and anyone who was willing to be complicit. Xiaoyong is certain about who is behind this. When Officer Li hears his confident declaration, he asks what he means by it. Xiaoyong replies that the 3 guys they just took down each had handguns. He tells them to hold on to them and check for extra magazines because there's probably more of them out there. He also gives them his rifle and tells Officer Li to keep it. He'll leave them 5 magazines. Hong explains that the Bichue crew won't let this go, and with these weapons, 10 or so men should not be an issue. Now he tells them to hold out here for a couple of days while he reorganizes back home and then comes back to deal with that shitty crew. One of the men standing there is shocked and asks if Xiaoyong is seriously planning to take on Bichue. He points out that they're probably dozens strong, if not more, and it's no small task to go up against them. Officer Li tries to convince Xiaoyong that it's not worth the risk for them. He suggests that they just find another place. He reassures Officer Li not to worry about it because he already has some beef with the Bichue crew. Besides, in a few days he plans to return with a bigger vehicle to evacuate everyone to the east of the city near the old Tea Leaf City. He's building a stronghold there and will need people to help with that. Xiaoyong turns and walks away, offering a casual goodbye and telling them to take care of themselves. He also takes Hannah and Shu Shu with him. The scene transitions to a darker, more ominous setting. Dead bodies are scattered around, and outside, a lone guard is on duty. The place he's guarding is none other than Bichue. Inside the mansion, we see the people running this gang. Brother Wen, with his orange hair, is the boss of this place, and he asks why they haven't dealt with the supplies at the Jinhu Entertainment Center yet. Zhang Shengzhe, the overweight man, responds during a meeting, saying he's already sent people over, so they should be back by now. But little do they know, those people have already been wiped. The other guy, known as Kai, addresses the fatty and reminds him that there are quite a few high-end affiliates living over at Jinhu Mansion. They can't just take the supplies from the entertainment center without consequences. Shengzhe assures him that his people are already instructed to bring back anyone alive. The boss looks furious and openly expresses his disappointment with Shengzhe, frustrated that he still hasn't completed a single task assigned to him. Feeling the weight of Brother Wen's anger, Shengzhe humbly promises that this time everything will be handled perfectly, while Kai smirks in the background, pleased to see Shengzhe sweating under the pressure. Once Shengzhe steps outside for some air, one of his lackeys notices his sour mood and asks why he looks so defeated. Shengzhe snaps back, asking if the 7 men he sent have returned. The lackey informs him that he sent people an hour ago to check, and they reported back that the whole squad has been wiped out. The news leaves Shengzhe stunned and terrified. He can't believe that regular civilians from Rangxiang Gardens could take down 3 armed men. In a panic, he commands his lackey, Taozi, to gather everyone who can handle weapons. This time, he's determined not to let the mission fail. Meanwhile, Xiaoyong finally makes his way back to the base. As soon as Shanshan hears the sound of the car, she quickly realizes that it must be brother Xiaoyong returning. When Xiaoyong enters the boundary of his fort, the mission window pops up, notifying him that the mission has been completed successfully. Shanshan greets him, happy to see him back, but Xiaoyong quickly notices that Lu Yiming is missing from the crowd. He feels absolutely glad to see that his hunch about that snake was spot on. Everyone is shocked when they realize that Xiaoyong knew about Lu Yiming all along. Xiaoyong then points to Hannah and Jean, asking the others to show them to their rooms and then meet him in the infirmary. Once he's alone with his party, Xiaoyong explains that he had known from the start that Lu Yiming had ill intentions. While he admits that he wasn't entirely sure it was him, he was certain that one of Zhang Qi's friends was a scumbag. Xiaoyong then throws a big gun toward Zhang Qi as Bleachhead catches it and examines the bullets. He quickly realizes they're rubber bullets. The old man's mind clicks, and he quickly asks about the kid, Chen Chong, who's inside the infirmary. Xiaoyong strides confidently toward the infirmary, casually mentioning that Chen Chong isn't an ordinary zombie. Instead, he's a rare mutant, a fact he had already confirmed some time ago. He had asked the zombie to blink 3 times, and to his surprise, the zombie complied. Xiaoyong explains that after the apocalypse, those infected by otherworldly sources have a slim chance of becoming rare mutants. These mutants usually possess far greater intelligence and potential than regular zombies. They may even retain fragments of their past memories, and Chen Chong is exceptionally rare among the rare. Xiaoyong then opens the door, and the first thing they see is Chen Chong standing over the head of the man who had been causing trouble. The zombie quickly waves his hand upon seeing Xiaoyong. Xiaoyong orders him to stop holding back, saying there's no need to restrain himself and that he should get rid of this bastard now. As the mutated guy begins dragging that snake out, his bleachhead friend asks him if he remembers him. The zombie's feet falter as he stops and looks at Zhang Qi. No one can figure out what's going on in the zombie's mind. Abruptly, he swings his hand at Bleachhead, who barely dodges it in time. It seems that Chen Chong is just messing with his old friend, which explains to Zhang Qi how, even as a zombie, he still can't keep his hands to himself. Later, Xiaoyong is staring at his system screen. Xiaoyong unlocks a hidden achievement titled Mutual Companion, and the achievement is completed, adding system points to Xiaoyong's total. Xiaoyong is surprised to see that he's unlocked a hidden achievement, a nice little bonus. Curious, he decides to check if the shop has anything new. Upon looking, he notices a level 2 box labeled high-tech supply box, something he's never seen before. However, it's expensive, and Xiaoyong hesitates to spend his hard-earned 50 points on it. Instead, he opts to open the remaining 2 boxes first, figuring they won't take up space anymore. As he opens both of them, he receives 2 unexpected items. The Lifesaver supply box grants him an interdimensional infection blocker, which offers a chance to block otherworldly infections but can't reverse mutations that are already complete. The Armed Deterrent supply box surprises him even more as it contains a Barrett M82, a powerful sniper rifle, along with a bundle of bullets. Xiaoyong is amazed at his crazy luck. Not only does he receive a game-changing weapon from a level 1 box, but the infection blocker is a real deal-breaker. The idea that it could potentially stop someone from fully turning into a zombie excites him. This stroke of fortune fills him with confidence, making him even more eager to open the level 2 box. He can barely contain his excitement, but he knows he has a mission to focus on first. His current task is to recruit survivors from Rongxiang Garden, and he's looking forward to completing it tomorrow. Outside, Chen Chong tosses the snake out of their fort's vicinity since there's no place for traitors like him. As morning arrives, everyone gathers in the training grounds. From the old to the young, each person is armed and ready. Xiaoyong announces that, starting today, everyone must spend at least an hour practicing their shooting daily. They begin firing at target bottles, and each hit creates a flash of light. Xiaoyong turns to Uncle Shinbu, instructing him to have Zhang Qi gather everyone and clear a few more rooms, as he plans to bring back survivors from Rongxiang Garden today. The old man promptly agrees, ready to carry out Xiaoyong's orders. Xiaoyong also orders Chen Chong to accompany him on the escort mission, knowing the mutant zombie's strength and abilities will come in handy. Later, they finally find an abandoned bus, currently overrun by mindless zombies. But Xiaoyong clears the zombies with ease, and Qin Chong helps by throwing the creatures out of the bus as well. Once the bus is cleared, Xiaoyong hands Qin Chong the bus keys, telling him that he can take off his mask if he wants to now, as there's no need to restrain himself. However, he adds that once they reach Rongxiang Garden, he should make sure to put the mask back on so he doesn't scare anyone. The mutant guy acknowledges the order with a growl. Meanwhile, at Bichue, Zhang Xingzhe is gearing up to depart for Rongxiang Garden, accompanied by a group of lackeys. This time, Zhang Xingzhe is personally leading the charge, determined to take down Rongxiang Garden once and for all. He refuses to believe that he's going to lose, not with the numbers and weaponry he has at his disposal. Their truck roars to life and speeds out of the compound, headed for Rongxiang Garden. After cleaning up and hijacking a random bus filled with zombies, Xiaoyong hopped on the driver's seat and quickly got to work. He saw a few more zombies clogging the highway and did not even think of stepping on the brakes for a single second. He mowed through those mindless monsters like the gigachad that he is. With his enhanced reaction speed, he used the bus to drift and swerve through the plethora of abandoned cars blocking his personal freeway. Back in Rongxiang Garden, the high-rise buildings seemed peaceful from the outside. Inside, the group of survivors, led by the reliable cop Big Bro Lee, are currently munching on their rations, careful not to burn through their limited supplies all at once. Their mealtime was interrupted by the loud sound of a car engine coming from outside. The kid reckoned that brother Xiaoyong must have come back to rescue them. Thankfully, Big Bro Lee has a good head between his shoulders. He grabbed his AK-47 and signaled everyone else to be silent while he checked out the situation first. With utmost caution, he slowly peeked his head above one of the windows with a clear line of sight outside. What he saw was not their savior but a group of thugs hungry for revenge. They are checking their weapons and looking for building number 8. Upon confirmation, the thugs took arms, and upon confirming their target location, Zhang Xingzhe ordered his men to move out. Big Bro Lee was stressed out. Just when he thought they could leave their hiding spot to join Brother Yong's fortress, the bastards from Bichue Mountain showed up. Old Song raised his pistol, ready to face the scumbags who just can't learn their lesson. Now that they have a few guns distributed among the group, the survivors have gained quite a bit of confidence. Big Bro Lee yelled at the fake tough civilians to not get cocky. Right outside is a whole battalion that outnumbers and outguns them by a mile. He reminded everyone to stick to the plan, and as he headed to the rooftop, he set up an ambush. Outside, the Bichue Mountain Battalion gauged if they had reached the optimal distance to terrify the survivors holed up in the building led by Zhang Xingzhe. They collectively raised their scoped weapons, carefully aiming at the numerous windows of building number 8. Old Song peeked through the window and immediately screamed at everyone inside to be careful and take cover. The silent morning was interrupted by the sound of automatic weapons firing wildly into the high-rise. Every window within range was shattered, pushing Old Song back deeper. After the first wave of warning shots, Zhang Xingzhe ordered one of his lackeys to hand over the megaphone. While he negotiated a deal, the others must keep aiming and wrecking the windows with the intent of shooting anyone who dares to show their face. Zhang Xingzhe arrogantly spoke into the mic, demanding the attention of the survivors hiding inside. Before he could put out another threat or another word, the lackey right beside him got his skull pierced and his brain scrambled by a bullet. The thugs froze in fear. They were not expecting to be targeted by hidden snipers at all. Another bastard fell to his ass after receiving a clean shot to the leg up on building number 8's rooftop. The muzzle of the AK-47 spreads the smell of gunpowder in the air while the thugs scramble to find cover. Big Bro Lee has posted up in an optimal spot with a clear vision of the enemies. Bichue Mountain never could have anticipated that the survivors would have long-range automatic weapons in stock. Zhang Xingzhe blamed the intel they received for the claim that the survivors only had one pistol. Even if they pilfered the weapons of the 7 idiots that died last time, there should only be 4 pea shooters. The panicked thugs turned to their boss for their next move, afraid of getting picked off by the unseen threat. The simple answer was to retreat. These bastards are not exactly the sharpest tools in the shed. They took that order literally and scattered like headless chickens, running out of cover instead of waiting for the signal to run together. Running in the open streets with a deadly sniper is a recipe for disaster. The cop on the rooftop was as ruthless as he was accurate with that AK. Zhang Xingzhe berated his dumbass lackeys for running to their deaths. He counted down to 3, and the remaining bastards retreated as if their lives depended on it. That's because they did. While his lackeys skedaddled in a panic, Boss Lee remained hidden in his cover wall. It did not take long for the sniper on the roof to adjust his aim and kill off the retreating thugs one by one, racking up headshots and body shots one after another. From the beginning, Boss Lee's strategy was to use his men as fodder until the sniper ran out of ammo so he could safely run back to his car, a certified scumbag move. As he expected, the sniper eventually ran out of ammo and had to reload with a fresh clip. For a bit, Shuang's fat ass managed to reach the car safely. From a whole battalion, they were down to just 4 people. Unfortunately for the last one who lagged a few seconds behind, Li Shuang was in the driver's seat, and he could not be bothered to risk getting domed while waiting for another expendable unit. Catboy got his brain pierced by the high-caliber bullet, and it was lights out. The other 2, fortunate enough to hop into the cargo bed, lowered themselves, afraid to suffer the same fate that everyone else in their group endured. Back on the main road, Jiang Xiaoyong's magic school bus was still blazing through the clogged freeway like he was as cool as a cucumber while navigating his way back to rescue the survivors. Given that the roads were pretty much abandoned at this point, seeing another car speeding up in the opposite direction was quite a surprise. Even though he could, Xiaoyong chose not to meddle or chase. He was focused on the mission at hand. Currently, obtaining points was of paramount importance to him. After a few minutes of smooth cruise control, he arrived at the front of building number 8. Chen Chong, the friendly zombie, and Xiaoyong got out of the bus and immediately saw the aftermath of the shootout. The young man was impressed to see that the rifle he left behind came in handy. He also connected the dots that the car he had just seen must have belonged to the fleeing raiders. Chen Chong looked at the fresh, bullet hole-ridden human corpses scattered on the ground and started salivating while growling like an animal. Xiaoyong smiled and asked his zombie pal if he was hungry. He gave Chen Chong the green light to go crazy on the fresh carcasses. It was better that he got the human meat feast instead of leaving it for the mindless zombies around the area. As soon as he heard he was free to stuff his jaws with sustenance, Chen Chong smiled like a messed-up kid in a candy store. Xiaoyong let his boy run free as long as he met him under building number 8 after the feast. Chen Chong did not waste a second and bit into the sinewy neck meat of the nearest dead thug. He savored the taste of blood and flesh touching his tongue. As soon as he swallowed, an invigorating feeling spread across his body. Meanwhile, Jiang Xiaoyong strolled through the bloody battlefield as if he were taking a leisurely walk in the park. Based on the efficient method the thugs were dealt with, he was impressed with how decisive Uncle Li was when it came to killing. The kid poked his head above the broken windows upon hearing footsteps, and he immediately lit up upon seeing Xiaoyong. Upon confirmation that it was their savior, the rest of the survivors showed themselves and enthusiastically beckoned him to come closer. With the super cop in the front, the survivors packed up and met the young man downstairs. Big Bro Li formally thanked Xiaoyong for lending him the Counter-Strike weapon that saved everyone's asses. As it turns out, before this dude retired, he was an expert marksman. Their happy reunion was interrupted by a loud, guttural roar reverberating from afar. It was followed by the sound of steady footsteps. The survivors were frozen in terror as soon as they saw what was inching closer to them. It was their favorite badass zombie, Chen Chong, limping over with a strained look on his face. Big Bro Li was the fastest one to react. He grabbed the trusty AK-47 and quickly aimed at the approaching zombie. Xiaoyong calmly held down the rifle and told the survivors to relax since this guy was one of them. He said the beast was one of them, but everyone was having a hard time believing such a ridiculous statement. Xiaoyong directed Chen Chong's attention to the rest of the dead thugs nearby, telling him to fill up on some more free grub. Big Bro Li was amazed and terrified. He asked if Xiaoyong had the ability to talk to zombies or anything of the sort. The young man asserted that Chen Chong was not an ordinary zombie. It was a complicated matter, so he urged everyone to get on the bus first and promised to explain everything to them. On the way, as they walked to the bus, Xiaoyong reminded his zombie buddy to eat quickly and come back to the bus as soon as he was done. Chen Chong gave the okay gesture as if he couldn't be bothered to stop his gory chomping. After putting every dead Beachway Mountain thug into his stomach, Chen Chong fished out his muzzle and put it back on. The survivors could not take their eyes off the bizarre scene ahead. The kid could not even fathom how one of these mindless berserkers would even have the lucidity to put a muzzle over their mouths on their own. Xiaoyong warned the kid not to let Chen Chong hear him call the specialized mask a muzzle if he didn't want to get hit. Low-key, the kid was starting to find the mutated zombie cool. After his one-man feast, Chen Chong stepped into the bus like a normal, chill dude. Upon eating so many people in one go, his mass increased a lot, and the bus noticeably tilted to the side as soon as he got in. This time, Chen Chong had even managed to speak slurred words while he handed the key of the muzzle back to his bro. Even Xiaoyong wasn't expecting that Chinchong would gain the ability to speak so soon, even if it was just a single word. He ate a total of 6 corpses and must have started evolving further. Right now, Xiaoyong's primary concern was getting everyone back to his home to convert his points and strengthen the settlement. He sat in the driver's seat and warned everyone to hold tight as he drove from 0 to 100 real quick. Back in Beechway Mountain's headquarters, Liang had to report his failure back to his superiors. He was berated for being an idiot who couldn't accomplish anything. He tried to plead his case to Boss Lin, attempting to wash his hands of any fault as he received inaccurate intel going into the raid. He wasn't informed that the survivors had automatic rifles at all. Boss Lin refused to believe his excuse. Logically speaking, it was hard to believe that a small-town cop would be in possession of an automatic rifle in this country. The big boss was offended, thinking that Zhang Xingzhou would cook up such a stupid lie. But he stood his ground and asked if they could send someone to check the battlefield to see if he was lying or not. The right-hand man of the boss had enough of his nonsense and kicked the bastard down to the ground. That's Xingzhe Q to get the hell out of the room. Mr. Right Hand had been starting to get sick of Xingzhe's idiocy and uselessness for a while now since the fool cost them heavy losses in manpower. They could always just nip the problem directly from the source and kill the bastard. Another Beechway Mountain executive, Boss Shu, called out the right-hand man's real reason for resenting Xingzhe. This perv right here had been eyeing Xiaoyong's girl for a while now. The pervy fox proposed that they share the bastard's girl among themselves, thinking of her as shared property. Boss Wen smiled. He seemed on board with that idea but insisted that they do not have to rush. They had to find the perfect opportunity first. Unbeknownst to the corrupt thugs, Xingzhe never left. He was just listening to their disgusting conversation from the entrance. He gritted his teeth in anger. Bro really needed to snake his way out of this one. A few hours later, he went back to his lavish house and threw a childish tantrum out of frustration for his own incompetence. He wrecked his own place like a dumbass. His girl came out to check on him, trying to console the fat bastard. Xingzhe simply told her to start packing as they had to leave this place as soon as they could. She asked where they would go, and he couldn't give a straight answer. The only thing certain was that this place wouldn't be safe anymore, and they needed to plan ahead. Xingzhe called his assistant, Qinji, and the loyal lackey ran in like a good boy. He ordered Qinji to gather all their remaining men as they prepared to depart at midnight. His girl could sense that something was obviously wrong, and she did not like it at all. Anyways, back to the people that actually matter. Xiaoyong pulled up to his compound, parking the big bus into one of their many indoor parking areas. The survivors from building number 8 hopped out of the vehicle and marveled at the sheer scale of Xiaoyong's doomsday fortress. With them safe and sound, the survivor recruitment mission was completed. He was tasked to rescue 5 of them, but he managed to bring back 8. Apart from the 25 reward, he was given another 5 points as a bonus, pushing his total to 66. Xiaoyong turned to his zombie buddy and informed him that tomorrow night they were going on a 2-man mission to the Southern District. Big Bro Lee overheard the human-zombie conversation and curiously asked what was in the Southern District. The young man simply told him that he had to go take care of some unresolved cross-time grudges with the people at Beechway Mountain Villa. By nightfall, Xiaoyong locked himself in his room while eyeing the level 2 high-tech supply crate worth 50 points, which he now had enough points to purchase. Without hesitation, he clicked the item's logo, excited to find out what was inside his first level 2 crate. Upon redeeming it successfully, his current points plummeted down to 16. A bright light swirled around his body as Jiang Xiaoyong prayed not to be let down after spending a fortune.